lot of times I feel like,
I'll next motion from this.
feel worse after waking up from a nap. than-
Yeah, so I don't do it, just here. Not in my, I'll lay it on a long.
Yeah, my dad could never do that either. I've never seen my dad actually like sit down, take a nap under a tree or something. He's always going.
I'm on his team.
I've never laid down, I've never taken a nap in my life.
We're gonna get to sleep eventually.
There you go.
I'm gonna be laying down a long time.
That's right.
sometime.
We're good.
So until I do, I'm up and running.
Although it was possible,
can't
Shane,
catch
that you
me.
probably almost killed us with this agenda. Almost.
I know. It always, I always said this, feel free to table anything.
We're
get
good.
Down the road, whatever your pleasure is.
Ready, ladies and gentlemen?
Yes, yes, monsieur.
Go ahead, Bob.
For the city of Petoskey, call the city council for July seventh, 2025. For the city of Petoskey, please rise with me for a pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. I pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
City Clerk Sarah Beck, would you please call roll?
Demore,
Present.
Shields.
Here.
Knaptrap.
Here.
Walker.
Present.
Murphy.
Present, we have a quorum. Thank you for showing up. Next is the consent agenda. It's adoption of a proposed resolution that would confirm approval of the following. The June 2nd, 2025 regular session city council meeting minutes, as well as acknowledge the receipt of certain transactions that have occurred administratively since June 2nd, 2025. Also included is the May 2025 revenue and expenditures report for you, as well as authorization contract for water service line material verification. I take it to council for possible questions, changes, or then a motion. Mr. Moore.
I have a question about the water service line material verification bids. I don't know if you want to leave that in or if I should ask the question now.
I think it's just as easy to have it down. So ask your questions to the city manager.
Okay, so, under scope, it's talking about the next step is to conduct over 770 field verifications. So am I correct in understanding this has already begun, though?
Yeah, I think this is our second year of doing identification. So we're hopeful that we can get reimbursed for some of the costs that we've already incurred to this point. And I believe that answer was in the affirmative that we can. So yes, we started this process last year. This is kind of an ongoing process to essentially get this inventory complete. So we sent out bids for this work, and we were a little concerned when we saw the gap, the low bid to the high bid. Typically, that's a little bit of a red flag sometimes, that do you really understand your scope? And so Jason confirmed with the low bid, they have done this same work in Traverse City. Jason checked his colleagues over in Traverse City. They were very comfortable with working with this contractor. They did fine work. And so that's our recommendation to proceed with the low bid in this case.
Okay, then the next question is, will the cost of Hubble and Roth be reimbursable under the grant as well?
That's a good question. No.
And then a final question, do we have any updates on funding for us once this verification process is underway? Like who's going to actually pay for these lines on the private side? Do we have any updates on that?
Any words of wisdom, Jason?
Jason Fade.
Yes, thank you.
So right now we're working on our CIP. So the plan would be to budget that in the capital improvements plan as we go forward. Right now, there are no grants available that we would qualify for. They're going to disadvantaged communities right now. And so we've talked to Hubble, Roth and Clark about grants and and other funding sources for water capital improvements. And right now, they're going to educate us here in the future, but right now there's nothing.
So Jason, just to be clear, the mandate comes from the state, but the state isn't providing any funding to complete the job.
They are providing funding, but it's
The inventory.
not to us, correct?
Okay, thank you for the update.
Yep.
I have a question, Mayor.
Ms. Walker,
Thank you. So can you tell me, when would we find out if we qualify for the $600,000 grant that the city and Hubble, Roth and Clark applied for?
So back in late 23, we already applied for this. In April of 2024, we signed the agreement. So the $600,000 grant is ours.
Okay.
So it's a reimbursement type grant.
Jason,
And-
do you recall how much we spent last year for this? How much?
In contracted services, it was like 83,000.
Less than 100,000.
We did a lot of work ourselves with our crews, so I'm not,
Was I correct that that's potentially reimbursable? It's not correct.
it is not reimbursable. So this is reimbursement going forward.
Okay, for some reason I thought we had a window that we could get reimbursed from last year. Okay.
Nope,
So this is only prospective going forward.
going forward, yep.
Thank you.
the other ones that you identified, is that correct? What probably happened when you were doing street work such as Lake Street, et cetera?
No, so when the Eagle came down with this mandate, we were required to develop a list and we randomly selected service lines throughout the city. And so the first go around that we did with investigations was just that utilizing that randomized list to get us an idea of what we have in the system and then to narrow it down. Since then, we've narrowed it down with that investigation and then construction projects and then further review of city records. And so now this grant here will pay for service line investigation, material investigations of areas that potentially could still be connected with the lead service line or historically have been connected.
And we have 3 such services on Howard Street that we'll be addressing or something?
We have approximately 6
6, okay.
that we'll be replacing with that reconstruction project.
Will we be paying for that ourselves?
Yes.
Okay.
I have a question, Mayor.
How many total, do you have any guesstimate, what are we looking at for services that are,
At this point, it's very unknown still. And this grant will help us identify and further narrow that down.
on your first grant?
It's a lot less than what we had anticipated when we started doing all these
On
investigations.
your first grant, how many did you look at?
300, I think,
And how many?
360-ish.
And how many randomly were in need of service?
I don't know,
idea.
John. I'm not sure.
5, 10, 100?
It was more than 10,
Okay,
but less than 100.
Okay.
I don't recall.
okay. So we do need to address this and continue.
Yep.
Are there grants to write to get funding to support the replacement of these services that are needed?
We're constantly looking, and HRC is too, 'cause they have a lot of clients in our similar situation. So if
Okay,
they see something, they're gonna be letting us know,
okay,
and then we'll write a grant to help on that.
sounds great.
I think we can also reach out to our legislators
Mhm.
to encourage
Sure we
them
have.
again.
Ms. Walker,
Thank you, Mayor. So of the perspective, the bidder that's being recommended is a total cost, and it's going to be for the next 2-year period for a total project cost of $389,162.40. Of that, there's still like a pool of $600,000 to pull from, or has some of that money been expended in that $600,000 grant? Or would all of this cover, would all of the costs of the $389,000 be covered by this potential $600,000 grant?
It would be covered by the $600,000 grant.
Awesome. Thank you. Mayor, if there's no other questions or just, oh, no, we're gonna wait on the total package.
are there
Yes.
any other questions? I ask for a motion. Walker?
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant, are there any other, I guess I did have questions on
Please
the,
ask.
I'm sorry, on the check registers.
Go for it.
Okay, thank you. So on the check register, there was a couple of contracted services. So on page 12, which would be the second page of the register. The line item of the city of Traverse City for contracted services, 22,278.85. I'm assuming that's reimbursement work for the ice storm and like pulling on our municipalities and partners in the Michigan Municipal Power Association. And there was another one for Zealand, I believe, a check register. So that's what that was
Yep.
for.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. And then I did have another question, Mayor, if I may.
Please.
There's Zealand as well, was 48,000. Excuse me. There was a line item. Excuse me, sorry. Oh, on page 24. Biotech Agronomics, Inc. for sludge removal, $55,250.
That is for biosolid application, land application from our wastewater treatment plant. That's a pretty much an annual cost that we,
Annual flat.
Yep.
fee. Thank you. Those were my questions, Mayor.
Anyone else?
I have a process.
Sure.
What I've been doing is when I review these, I have a lot of questions and I just send the question by email to Shane.
Mhm.
Then he answers me, and not pick it up here. So am I supposed to be asking the question publicly?
I think
Am I supposed to do it by-
you have a right to do either one.
Oh, okay.
I leave it up to you.
I would just say from my standpoint, it's beneficial if you could give me a heads up so I could do some research ahead of time. There's a lot here, right? There's, I don't know how many pages of check register we do have. I can't recall every single item.
Right.
So if you give me a heads up, like I would like more information on X, Y, or Z, that's very beneficial for me and Audrey to prepare a response.
Okay.
Mayor.
There's, Jane, we're fine with if you ever say, I need to check on that, because the city has a multi-million-dollar budget, and don't ever feel bad about saying, I'll get back with you on
Yeah, sure.
it.
I
Okay.
appreciate that.
Joe, did you have a question, or
No.
Lindsay?
Thank you, Mayor. So on the monthly report for the general fund and, we get this report financials for all of the different funds for the city, but the general fund is the cover letter. And I did have a question about on page 2, under Department of Public Works and solid waste. So solid waste has an annual general fund budget, which mostly this comes out of the enterprise fund, but in this context, solid waste, $279,000 a year. And we've spent, budgeted 279,000 and we spent 298 before the halfway mark of the calendar year. So they're over by 106%. I'm assuming that some of that has to do with the ice cleanup, the storm debris. Is that why they would be over budget?
I think that might be, and Jason, you can maybe start walking up here, but I think that might be our curbside collection. Is that from our curbside, waste collection?
Some of that is curbside. I'm not sure what else is wrapped up in that line item though, so to answer your question exactly, I'd have to research it.
Like the wood grinding and chipping, I would think would come out of that in addition to the curbside spring and fall cleanup.
Yes,
Yes.
Okay.
yep.
Thank you. And that's it for my questions.
What else up?
I move to support the consent agenda.
I'll second the motion, Mayor.
To go to Ms. Beck for roll.
Nachtrab,
Aye.
Walker,
Yes.
Demore,
Aye.
Shields.
Yes.
Murphy.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Next is your opportunity for public comment. If there's something on the agenda you wish to speak to, we would prefer that you hold it until we address that issue on the agenda. If you have to leave, please let me know and we can work you in. Is there anyone in the public that wishes to address city council, not the audience, but city council? If you do, give us your full name, full address, and you'll have time.
None online.
There being none, we now move on to city manager's update. I turn it over to our city manager, Shane Horn.
Thank you, Mayor. Before I start, I just want to give some kudos to staff, even outside of our normal birthdays and work anniversaries. As you all know, we start really in March, once snow and frost is out of the way, and this year we had obviously another abnormality that happened with this ice event, but really our staff starts in earnest in March to try to get to a point where our community is cleaned up, is ready for the influx of visitors that we all get to host. And I just thought we really put our best foot forward this past week. And really kudos to staff. They did an outstanding job preparing for the week that was very busy for everyone. It was all hands on deck. We had really all of our seasonals were with us as well, and it was just one thing after another that we were preparing for. And then once the 4th happens, the parade happens, now it's very quickly trying to pivot and get into cleanup mode. And so I'm really proud of staff, how we, even through the challenges of an ice storm, we still were able to provide the services, get our community to a point where we could really accept our visitors, the resorters that come and enjoy our community. And I think just the events that happened over this past week and weekend, a lot of volunteers that assisted with that effort as well. And just, again, how it all came together. And again, I give a lot of kudos to staff and those that were, changing garbage. That's a big deal. If that doesn't happen, the trickle down from that. And so I always wanted to keep a tally of how many times we're cycling trash receptacles out during a busy weekend like this, because it was a big ordeal and big effort. So I just want to again give kudos to staff, and I'm very pleased to be able to work with a really high functioning team. So thank you for that. Birthdays and anniversaries for the month of July. So our only birthday, well, I shouldn't say only. Councilmember Shields celebrates a birthday this month. And then Jason Fate in Public Works celebrated this past week with a July birthday. Work anniversaries. Mike Parker, Lieutenant Public Safety, celebrates 27 years this month. Rob Eichler, Electric Department, 25 years. Lisa Denoyer in Planning and Zoning, 21 years. Pat McGinnis, Electric Department, 13 years. Eric Crussell, Electric, 13 years. Wyatt Putman, Electric Department, 4 years. And Nick Hunter in Parks and Recreation, 2 years this month. Next turn. Just a few things to highlight. Obviously, it's summer now, and so we're transitioning to maybe instead of people coming up for a long weekend, they're up and they're staying up. So we want to make sure that they have things to do while they're up here. So during the month of July really starts our activities downtown. We have our sidewalk sales coming up in a few weeks. The Summer Sounds of Summer series, really every Friday starting July 18th through mid-August. We have a performance down on Friday night in Pennsylvania Park, followed by movies in the park at dark. So after the performance, folks can stick around and watch movies in Pennsylvania Park as well. So that really kicks off in earnest on July 18th through mid-August. Same thing with our Bayside concert series. Unfortunately, we got rained out last night, so that'll be rescheduled. But every Sunday evening through August, we'll have live music down at the Bayfront, kind of in the promenade area. So we encourage folks to bring a lawn chair, bring some snacks and just kind of enjoy some good live music over the next couple months. Some updates on our construction projects. Howard Street that's Howard Street from State to Sheridan, that's the limits. So from State to Grove, you've likely seen that we've completed that stretch. Paving is complete over this past weekend. Landscaping, trees were planted. So if you have not been in that area, you can kind of see that, and I have a few pictures to show you as well. So we're transitioning, trying to get over the crest of the hill, where maybe we've had a couple washouts in that area after some gully washers, and that's been challenging to kind of keep up with that on that slope. So we're anxious to kind of crest the hill and get more on a flat surface that maybe we won't have those challenges going forward. But we've had a few hiccups with that, with some heavier downpours. So sanitary sewer has been completed through Fulton Street. The water main is installed to Fulton as well. We'll start connecting water services by early next week. And then storm work has begun from Grove to Fulton this week. The new road bed should be completed through Fulton by the end of next week. And then curb and gutter sidewalk will follow. So we're doing this kind of in segments. What we have determined, and there's been a few delays with the contractor. We're a little concerned about timing. So we're actually going to jump ahead after we get to Fulton Street. We're going to jump ahead and kind of go the opposite way from Sheridan to Jennings, because we have to have that completed before school. So that's a very critical stretch for us, and we're a little concerned that they're not quite going to get there in time. So we're kind of moving them forward, jumping forward, and so we'll go from Sheridan to Jennings around July 21st is when we'll make that switch, and they have to complete that before school. So they're aware of that. They know that if they need to come in on a Saturday to try to catch up, they know that they can do that. And we'll try to work with them to the best of our ability to get this completed on schedule. Pennsylvania Park, project is complete with a few minor punch list items. This is from really the Petoskey Chamber building to Bay Street. Hopefully you've walked that area and have seen the amenities that we've added through that stretch. It's been a really good project. It's been neat to watch people take advantage of the picnic tables, getting a sandwich or using them, interacting on them. It's been very gratifying to see that. As well as the Bayfront Arboretum Trail, that project is also complete. We're essentially watching grass grow now. So that's been a great project as well to get completed. Seville parking lot reconstruction, just a few landscape issues. We've adjusted the transformers and junction boxes within the landscape areas. Now we're just waiting to do some final landscape screening around the transformers, and that project will be essentially complete as well. So just a few pictures of the projects. The picture to the left is Howard Street looking from Grove to State Street. Then the other picture is the opposite direction, looking from State Street up to Grove. So you can see on both sides, we've now landscaped, planted trees on both sides. That's just really looking nice, and that hopefully will continue going forward. Next group of pictures is on Howard again from Grove to Fulton. So this is where we're actively working currently. They're putting storm in now. And again, the other picture is looking opposite from Fulton down to Grove. So again, we're looking forward to getting up to Fulton where we kind of flatten out a little bit more and don't have that slope to work with. Pennsylvania Park Avenue projects, just various directional pictures for that, but you can kind of see the sidewalk improvements, the picnic tables, trash receptacles, lighting improvements, the trees that were planted, new sod placed in the park as well. Seville parking lot as well, a couple of vantage points there. You can see the landscaping, the pay station to the picture on the right. Again, nice improvement with the guardrails out of there. And a single central pay station without all the individual meters. So again, kudos to Jason and Matt and the team for really, this was a very quick turnaround, starting really in April. Had some delays with obviously the ice event, but to get these projects in before the busyness of what we see now was, again, credit to staff, credit to our contractors who really bought into the schedule and got those projects completed.
What is throwing off the Howard Street project? It wasn't the city, correct? It was the contractor, because I went by several days and there was nobody out there working on days.
Yeah, I
They
mean,
move
it's,
on to a different
yeah.
job, or they just take days off, or?
I think probably a variety of reasons. We have had some weather, and they've called days off where we looked at each other and like, well, that was, if you look at the radar, this system's gonna be out of here by 10 o'clock. And then they call it a rain day. So they know what their contract deadline is. There is liquidated damages built into the contract. We hope that we don't have to use that, but Jason has had some heart-to-heart discussions with them, expressing concerns, and hopefully they take that to heart and we'll bring more. I think they've maybe branched off and picked up a few more jobs, even though this was going to be their focus this year. This is a big job for them, and we had some initial concerns about the scope of the job and their ability to pull this off. So hopefully they'll rise to the occasion and put the appropriate amount of time in that this project needs.
Yep. Ms. Demore.
Just to follow up on the Seville parking lot, I had a question from a couple folks as to whether or not there was going to be signage of some type directing people that they needed to go and pay. I haven't walked through to see, does that exist, or? So people are just parking thinking they don't need to because they're not familiar with the setup.
I don't know. Amy, was there?
There's signage at both that say pay by plate, and then the pay station signs are at both of the pay stations.
So where are the signs that say pay by plate?
There's one as you're coming into the parking lot.
Okay.
And I don't know if there's one up by the alley or not, but there's a very clear pay here sign.
Jason said there is one.
Okay,
There's one there as well.
okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Ms. Walker.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Shane, for an excellent report.
Mhm.
I did want to ask, so when we talk about the Howard Street reconstruction project, is it about 2 months per section, per block that it's taking? So if we talk about like, it started at the end of April, if I'm correct, like around April the 26th, and then April to like June 26th was the first section. And now the next section is Grove to Washington almost. So that next section will take 2 months as well, and that's why you're preempting the Sheridan to Atkins Road extension is like
Yeah.
the next phase, and you want to bypass that very short section between Washington and Jennings. And it's really only like maybe 5 residents on the Ward 4 side and about 6 residents on the Ward 2 side of Howard Street.
Mhm.
So do you think that this city or maybe the ward representatives should follow up with those residents just to let them know that like, hey, it's actually not coming your way next month. It's going this way.
Think they'll
I think,
figure it
yeah.
out.
Okay.
Jason.
Yeah.
So yeah, once we know a more defined schedule, we will be reaching out to all the residents to let them know what's going on.
Okay.
We hesitate to give them too much information ahead of time because as we know, construction, weather, it's affected. And so we like to nail it down a little bit before we let them know what's going on. And then it's about 5 to 6 weeks per block and a half. So, but it's hard to gauge because they did start in the most difficult spot on the project. With all the utilities and the State Street intersection, it took them a really long time. There is a lot of stuff in the ground that was existing that they had to dig around, gas, fiber, electric, street lighting. And so when you dig, you can't just take a scoop out and work your way down the grade. It's very time consuming. So as they work up, they're gonna run into some other challenges. So it's hard to say that it's actually gonna take 2 months or 6 weeks or whatever.
And then, can you remind me who the general contractor is again?
Harbor Springs Excavating.
Thank you so much.
Yes. City Manager Horn?
We have a representative and she was dividing and conquering, was at the Emmett County Commissioners meeting just now, and I see she's just joined us. If council would indulge me, I'd like to give her a few moments from the Small Business Association to talk about opportunities that folks that have been impacted by the ice storm that her office, her department would have available. So Julie, if you would want to come up and kind of go over that.
I also have handouts for you. Okay, sorry. I have handouts.
Yep.
Can
Pass them down. Thank you.
We'll find out.
Yeah.
They might have those.
So, hi. Yeah, yes.
Full name.
I was gonna do
Who you
that.
represent.
Okay, my name is Julie Garrett. I'm a public affairs specialist with the Office of Disaster Recovery and Resilience with the U.S. Small Business Administration. And it's on my card that you have as well. So I've been working with Nikki at your chamber. She's amazing. And she and I did a webinar the first day I got here, and it's been up on the chamber website. And I feel like the information has gotten out well to businesses here. But I just want to make sure people understand that disaster loans are available for the ice storm, and they're for homeowners and renters and businesses of all sizes and nonprofit organizations. So we're the federal government source for long-term recovery funding in the United States. FEMA comes in and they do grants, and SBA comes in and we do loans for people. Your state is trying to get a FEMA declaration for the ice storm, but FEMA is taking a while to make up its mind whether to approve that declaration. So they had the option to come to our agency and get a declaration from us. So that's why I'm here now. So there's 3 types of loans available. There's physical disaster loans. That's for homeowners and renters and businesses. And then there's economic injury disaster loans for small businesses that had to close because they were without power. Even if they didn't have damage, they might have lost funding during that time. If customers couldn't come out and their business was way down, there's there's help with their capital expenses, okay, like working capital expenses. So I'm a little all over the place here. Sorry, I'm a little weirded out from running from that meeting to this meeting. But anyway, so primary residence, it's up to $500,000 for physical damages. That includes tree work. It includes fencing in the yard that could have gotten damaged, garages, sheds, decks, anything like that. A lot of those things aren't covered by insurance, or the insurance isn't enough. I've heard from a lot of people where they're just not getting a large enough settlement to make their repairs. So we can come in and fill that gap. We do take into consideration what insurance has settled with somebody, and we will make up the difference. And we offer an amount. We don't just let people come in and come up with a number. We look at their damage, look at their repairs, and we offer them an amount. Okay, so that's for homeowners up to 500,000 with interest rates as low as 2.75%. Renters and homeowners can apply for up to $100,000 for contents and for their automobiles. So that's the personal property aspect, up to 100,000, again, at that interest rate. And then businesses, it's up to 2 million, and that's at as low as 4%. That's for physical damage and economic injury, or a combination of the two. Your business community is well covered. They are aware of this because of Nikki. And then on top of all that, people can add on funding for mitigation projects at their house to make it safer for the next disaster. So that's another kind of nice quality of this program. And lastly, there are no payments for the first year and no interest for the first year. So we give people time to recover before they have to worry about making their loan payment. We have a center open at Little Traverse Township, 8288 South Pleasant View Road in Harbor Springs. That's open until the 26th of July. All the paperwork up till now has said it's closing Saturday, but it's been extended. It just got extended today, and we'll be putting that out. But I just want you to know people don't have to rush down there by Saturday. And the application deadline is August 8th for a physical disaster loan, and it's March 9th of next year for economic injury. People can apply online, sba.gov/disaster. And we have an 800 number, 800-659-2955. Do you have any questions?
Just being contacted that are by Nikki that are not a part of the chamber.
Don't know. I know that she's gotten it. Uh-huh.
But if you're not, how are those being contacted?
I would have to ask Nikki that. I know that it has gone. Well, what I'm doing is stuff like this, media. We've gotten it out on TV, radio, newspapers, and I'm going around to tons of meetings like this. We don't individually call businesses.
I would ask that you contact the downtown development.
Okay. Do you have a Main Street Association here?
We have our downtown management board and
Okay.
and our director is right behind you, Amy.
Okay.
I ask that you contact
that
her
Amy?
with the
Hi, Amy.
information,
Okay.
because like I say, not all people that own businesses in downtown are members of the chamber.
Yeah.
So I think if you want all businesses, let's have Amy maybe. Amy, do you have a way of contacting businesses?
Yes, and I've shared the information that Nikki's sent out as well.
Okay,
Yeah,
with other businesses. Okay,
We've pushed it out on
Okay.
our city website as well.
okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we don't have somebody come back and say, I didn't hear about this.
Yeah. Good point.
Mr. Moore.
Two things. Confirming you said that there's a webinar about this on the chamber website.
Yes, there is.
Yeah.
It's on YouTube too. I can send you the link if you want.
That'd be great.
Okay.
And then also, I'm assuming this document here that has a lot of the information you just shared exists somewhere in a PDF format that can be transferred electronically.
Yes, Mr. Horn has that.
Should have,
I could have missed it.
okay.
It's entirely possible.
It's also online. There's a link which I can also send you. I'd be happy to send you that tomorrow, okay?
That way we can.
Yeah.
Constituents.
Yeah, that would be great. I have a couple more flyers that are very like friendly to look at. I'll send you those too.
Thank you.
We appreciate you coming here and sharing
Yeah.
this real important and good stuff.
Yeah.
Mr. Knobtrout.
Do you know if HOAs are eligible to their nonprofit?
They are.
They are eligible?
Yes, sir. They are. By the way, do you want to hear the figures for Emmett County so far for applications? So we've gotten 130 total as of noon on Saturday. Of those, at Seago 36, Sheboygan 34, Emmett 28. So even though the primary county was Sheboygan, I think with that number of applications, it shows that there is substantial damage here, and there's a strong need here for this. So 28 so far. And we get a by-county report every Monday, which I could also just get in the habit of sending to Mr.
Yeah, that'd be
Horn.
great. Yeah, appreciate that.
Yeah. You have my business card. If you hear of anyone having trouble with their application, just send me a note or call me anytime. You have my cell phone number. I'm happy to help. Okay,
Thank you. Julie.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Travel safe.
Nikki has her hand up. Do you want to hear from
Yes,
her?
please call out. Nikki, you have a comment?
Yes, thanks, Mayor. And I just want to say thanks to Julie. She's done a great job of getting out there and spreading this information. Just a couple notes and numbers. So we did obviously share this out. I shared it to Shane. We shared it to our entire membership list of 770 members, but also it's been posted on our social media where we have a very strong reach and many followers that are not chamber members. In addition, with our chamber newsletter, you don't have to be a chamber member to get that. We've got about 2,000 subscribers to that as well. The video on YouTube, I just looked, has had 172 views in the last week and a half. So we keep pushing that out as much as possible, especially with the updated dates, because the longer people have to be able to go apply in person is a great thing. And also on our website, Julie was able to give me the slideshow on the PDFs as well as more documentation. So everything that links to our page that we created for it has resources for businesses and community members alike. And when we're sharing it, we're making sure we're letting our community know as well that this is not just a business loan. And I just want to thank the city for being able to share that out and thank Julie and the SBA and the county for all the work they're doing to make sure that our businesses and residents have an opportunity right now for these loans.
And we thank you, Nikki, for carrying the banner for this. I knew that you would be doing a good job, but I just wanted to make sure everybody was covered. Thank you again. Ms. Walker.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to, to Julie as well. Thank you, Julie, for your time. Can you tell me, is there any intersection between like the nonprofit work with the Chelsea Harbor Springs Area Community Foundation and their emergency fund, and then giving local funds to the Northern Michigan Community Action Agency for low-income individuals to apply for assistance for storm-related impacts as well?
Are you asking?
Yeah, I'm asking if there's been an intersection between nonprofit and the SBA federal.
I don't know if there is. I've been in touch with FEMA to try to find VALs. They're the people who interact with the nonprofits to get that info. But the way it works with the SBA is we look at any other help people have gotten, their insurance settlement, a grant, anything, and then we make up the difference in that with what they need. So we do want to encourage people, if there are grants, to go for those first. They really want to try to get that grant money because that would reduce how much we would offer as a whole.
And then the cross-pollination between like the city's website and the chamber's website as well about those nonprofit grants available for mostly residents, I believe it is, not businesses. So, thank you.
Moving on. Thank you again, Julie. This, next is, let's see, what is it? Second reading and possible adoption of a proposed historic district ordinance. I'll turn it over to City Manager Horn.
Thank you, Mayor. We have a number of ordinances on this evening, so I've asked our city attorney, Laura, to join us as well, and she's available for any of your specific questions or feedback. I've tried to, and Laura and her team have been great in trying to answer some of the emails, and I know you've been getting information out, and I've been trying to pass those on throughout the afternoon as well. So I know there's a lot of things on this particular agenda. And as I said before, if there's always a tabling option. If you're not quite there yet, we can certainly have more discussion. Some of these ordinances, for instance, the vacant building ordinance, I know we've talked at a kind of a high level about, but we really not drilled down into the details. So this could just be a discussion. And so I don't want you to feel like you have to move these things forward. We will go on your time schedule. And so when you're ready, we'll continue to step through the ordinance process. But I thought it was valuable to have Laura join us just for your, direct input, and hopefully she can answer questions a little more succinctly and put you more at ease than I could ever do. So thank you, Laura, for joining us. So obviously this is second reading. as I look in this room, we have two professionally trained planners, we have two planning commission members, one professional architect. So there's a lot of knowledge in this room. One even has served as part of our steering committee when this was first discussed. So obviously, there's a lot of knowledge in the room, so I would encourage council to take advantage of the knowledge base that we have in this room as well. So this is second reading. We had a presentation from SHPO back in the first part of May to kind of give us an overview of what a certified local government looks like. What does that do for us as a community? What is the process involved with joining the certified local government program? One of the first things is enacting and enforcing an historic district ordinance, which is what is in front of you. I know that there has been some discussion about some concerns in place. This is somewhat of a boilerplate, if you will, resolution or ordinance from SHPO. I don't know how much wiggle room we have to play with components within the ordinance itself. Certainly that would be more of a discussion for Laura, but this is what's in front of you from our last discussion. It's back on for second reading. We'll obviously continue to take your feedback and input, and with Laura's assistance, hopefully be able to address your issues or concerns.
Mr. Moore.
So at the outset, I just want to put my conflict of interest statement on the record. I did it at the last reading, but every time we have a new audience. So in the spirit of full disclosure, and as indicated at the time of the first reading of this proposed ordinance, my husband and I own the Meyer Fryman property, which is number 7 on the map here, on the historic sites and district map in the packet. That home is on the state and national register of historic places. Relative to this proposed ordinance, I have no conflict of interest at this juncture, as confirmed by the city attorney, but will revisit the issue if the council moves to establish a historic district or districts. Thank you.
Any questions or comments? Mr. Knobtop.
You know, I'm not an attorney, and my one question was, were all you guys that are the expert, and Laura, is the wording, short of getting into wordsmithing, is this okay with you, the wording of it? Is there objections to it from anybody?
So I can jump in and say a lot of the wording comes directly from the Local Historic Districts Act statute, Act 169 of 1970. So it's not something newly created. It's the SHPO State Historic Preservation Office template, and it tracks the statutory language.
Okay, thank you. My second question is more of a practical question. In my own experience, I've had some rather significant SHPO experience, not in Michigan, but in Ohio. And I just want to try to ask the question that the trouble that I had, does this relate to what we would be dealt with if we adopt this? And it relates to SHPO has a lot of requirements that they have to pass on when you do a commercial building. And I'll just give an example. In the one that I did, they took before and after pictures. They took before pictures, and as part of getting the approval process for the whole building, if I'm a property owner, you go through a whole lot of stuff to get pictures from how it used to look. And you're supposed to absolutely make it exactly the same to the extent possible. And in our case, it was commercial property. The old pictures had one sign on it, and we have 10 or 15 tenants that we were only allowed, and SHPO would only allow us to have one little sign because that's what the old building was, and it didn't fit the commercial needs of a landlord. So is this something that we should be concerned about, that SHPO could be inhibiting the commercial use of people trying to make a living?
Well, there certainly are design standards and guidelines. I don't pretend to necessarily be an expert in the details of those, but that they can be quite rigid.
Anybody have?
Mr. Moore.
Wait,
We have an expert.
Expert.
Rick, yes.
You want him to answer? I don't see him moving.
Yeah, he raised his hand.
His hand.
Come on up, Rick.
Mr. Newman. Mr. Newman's on the planning commission. He's an architect.
Rick Newman, 610 Grand Avenue. I've been involved both personally and professionally for over 40 years with Michigan Historic Districts. Back in the 70s, when we lived in Ann Arbor, I was on several historic district study committees. I also served for a year or two on the Ann Arbor Historic District Commission. I've done design review work for the city of Mackinac Island and therefore historic districts, as well as doing some design reviews for Boyne City. They have one small residential historic district. And to answer Mr. Nachtrab's question, my experience in all these 40 years, both in terms of Michigan Historic District legislation, which the standards are the Secretary of the Interior standards, and I think all states around the country use the same standards to review project submissions. And both for those and for the historic tax credit that's available, there's a federal tax credit for, and I don't know if that's what you were
This was
referring
for
to.
tax credit, for sure.
With the before and after photos, that's typical of a tax credit project. Both for historic district work as well as the tax credit work, I've never seen any requirement that says you have to return a building to its original appearance. What they all do is they look at the building as it exists today, and if there are significantly historic elements on the building, then you're required to preserve those. But if they're missing, you don't have to put it back in place. And if you do put it back in place, maybe you restore it to its original appearance, but there are other situations where you can do sort of an abstracted version of what the original looked like. It doesn't have to be as expensive and in as much detail as the original. So like when I do design reviews for the city of Mackinac Island, it's in a flexible way. I mean, the whole purpose of both the tax credits and the historic district legislation is to try to promote the reuse of old buildings. And so old buildings can't be like fossilized under a glass and never change. You know, they change over time as people's use of buildings change. And really the historic district process is meant to try to just manipulate the change a little bit and make it happen maybe a little bit slower and not quite as maybe extreme as it might otherwise happen. But if anybody is aware of Mackinac Island, 20 or 30 years ago and what it looks like today, there's been a lot of change in downtown Mackinac Island. And that's during the last 10 or 12 years, that's happened under the historic district ordinance that they adopted about 10 or 12 years ago.
So you're saying that what Laura said is that they're rigid. You haven't experienced that in your day-to-day life with the owners of the property.
Well, it's rigid in
that they want to do.
It can be rigid in the sense that, if a historic building has, architectural characteristics, and if they represent the original time period or what's called the period of significance that the building exists in, then those elements need to be preserved. But other aspects can be changed. So anyway, I want to be available as a resource if during this process you have any questions as best of my ability, at least as an architect. I can't answer legal questions, but I have a lot of architectural experience with the process.
So if you replace pillars, they have to be the same kind of pillars. They can't be square pillars if you have round pillars.
Well, if that's what the building had historically, then yeah, you would try to put it back to try to match what was there historically, because that would be the appropriate thing to do.
Who would pay for that then?
Well, that's part of nobody's coming in and saying you have to change your building, but if you undertake a change on your own as the owner, then, your project, the proposed scope of work is reviewed through the Historic District Commission's review process. And you know, you would be expected to preserve the historic elements that are still there.
But who pays for the expected, what you requested?
Well, if it's a privately owned building, well, then that owner would pay for that, yes. I mean, it's their building and they're fixing up the building. They are choosing to replace the windows.
But let's say they had to replace the pillars and the big round pillars, and you want to replace them with 10 by 10s or 8 by 8s, that would be illegal, correct?
Well, if those were original to the building, yeah, probably so. They probably would be significant architectural elements that the ordinance would say need to be
What
preserved.
enforcement tool do we have for that?
I don't know, I'd have to defer to the legal folks on that, but
Rick, isn't there a tax credit system here too involved if you're doing what the mayor just described?
well, that's a whole separate program, the
Correct.
federal tax credit program, and there's also a state of Michigan historic preservation tax credit program as well. So, you know, you can get some significant up to 20% tax credit on your investment in a renovation federally.
I think the enforcement, Mr. Mayor, is the ultimate hammer is if you're caught doing something you weren't approved to do, on the credit side, it can be taken away from you.
Right.
That's
Right.
really the big hammer.
Well, but the tax credit program is totally separate from the local historic district designation.
A violation is a civil infraction.
There's the
So
answer.
just like other zoning ordinance or some other code violations, right? The city would enforce it in a similar fashion.
Mayor, Council, John Icoangeli, City Planner. I think the one thing that we need to understand is what you're considering for second reading is a historic district ordinance, which is a local historic district. Now, the discussion that Mr. Newman and Councilman talked about was the investment tax credit. And the investment tax credit is available to any property owner that's in a National Register district. That would be like Councilperson Demore had disclosed that she owns, her and her husband own a building that's on the National Register. If someone wants to avail themselves of the historic investment tax credit, that's their prerogative. It's not a requirement, but if they want to get the tax credit, then they apply through the SHPO program to get the credit, and they follow the SHPO guidelines in order to get the credit. Now, I've been involved personally as a general partner in the rehab of a 4-story commercial building, 3 stories above ground, 1 below average grade. And I've been involved as an economic development professional on about 4 different large projects that involved very significant tax credits. And the developers that have worked on those projects went in with the understanding that they were going to use the investment tax credit and comply with the SHPO requirements in order to get the investment tax credits, which now in the state of Michigan, between the federal and the state, is 25% of the total rehabilitation cost, which can be very significant. So you have the National Register districts, which we already have, and that was the map that was in your packet. The decision tonight is to create a local historic commission, which would then review all of the historic properties in town and determine which ones should be locally managed by the commission, and those properties in the district, if they undergo any exterior improvements, not interior, would be reviewed by the commission, and they would be given a certificate of appropriateness if they are, if it's compatible with the guidelines, or the commission would work with them on providing technical information and detail and consultation on how to make the improvements compliant. Now, I want to emphasize this as your city planner. Housing is a big policy issue in the community, and there are 4 components to a really good housing strategy. One is new construction, which is managed primarily through the zoning code. Redevelopment, which this council is familiar with, that would be the Maple Block project. The new construction would be the lofts at Lumber Square. There's rehabilitation, which we really haven't addressed yet, a little bit with the creation of the neighborhood enterprise zone to encourage rehabilitation. And the fourth component, which is currently missing and not in the toolbox, is the preservation component. Now, people that have property in local historic districts many times prefer to invest properties in those districts for one reason. They know that their investment is going to be protected. It's like in today's housing development, anything that's developed as a site condominium or as a vertical condominium project is always managed by either a master deed bylaws or covenants, conditions, and restrictions. And the reason why those are put in place, it's to protect the overall investment quality of the housing development. Well, neighborhoods that were developed back in the 1800s and 1900s did not have CCRs to fall back on. So the state of Michigan, about 20 years ago, hired a consulting firm out of Colorado to take a look at the appraised value at the time of about 8 historic districts in communities like Lansing, Grand Rapids, Kalamazoo, Ann Arbor. And what they found out was the properties that are in those regulated districts, their property values were on average 10 to 15 to 20% higher than the other similar properties that were outside of the districts. And the reason being is, if a person wants to live in a historic district and they want to renovate their house appropriately, they want to make sure that the house next door doesn't do something that's going to impair their value and ruin the investment that they put into their home. So that's why historic districts over a period of time, the taxable value actually outpaces the overall taxable value in the community. But what I wanted to emphasize tonight is you have national register districts, which you already have 2 of. And any property that's income producing in those 2 districts automatically, if the property owner wishes to avail themselves, they can go after the ITC. What's before you is the creation of a local historic district. That would not be done, will not be done, until you create a historic district commission who has a study committee that actually inventories the properties and then makes a recommendation to council of what that district should be. So by approving the second reading of the ordinance, you're mainly creating the commission, and then the commission has a role and responsibility to do legwork and come back to you with a recommendation of what they think is appropriate in the community. So there's several steps yet to go.
Mr. Shields.
You're hitting on something that, and I'm jumping ahead of some of the comments I have, but Mr. Eckelangeli, you talk about the commission, which 100%, I'm behind the commission. But it's also this ordinance. This ordinance is also being passed. So it's not. I feel like it's not just the commission we're talking about. We're talking about an ordinance that is going to be. It needs to. Right here it says it's going to need to be enforced. So what we're approving tonight is also an ordinance. Or are we saying that?
It's the ordinance, and in the ordinance, it's the process of creation of the commission. It's the role and responsibility of what the commission needs to do. And it's the process that they have to undertake to present to you sometime in the future what their recommendation is for the creation of a district. Now, if a local historic district is never created as an outcome of this, then really you have a historic district commission that really is not functioning.
I understand that, but this ordinance talks about I'll use the word, the red tape that will come if this commission approves the East Mitchell Street Historic District, the rules to governing that historic district is being approved in this, that then has to be enforced. So is that correct?
Let me back up. Tonight, you're being asked to create the commission. The commission has roles and responsibilities that are embedded in the ordinance. Part of the process is that the commission, once appointed by the mayor and council, has to review all of the historic assets in the community, determine if there is a significant collection of historic properties that they deemed that should be protected under local control. And then they have a process of public education. They hold a public hearing, they engage the public to get, to explain the pros and cons. At the very end of this process, they would make a recommendation to the council on what that district should be. And the council at that point in time, under ordinance, then has to create that district under a separate ordinance. So by approving the second reading tonight doesn't necessarily mean the city of Petoskey is going to have a local historic ordinance.
But it says that though.
But, but the ordinance, because
Your Honor.
thanks for letting me, because this is my hang up here. When it comes to that final step, the ordinance that will be before council is the ordinance that we see here.
Councilman DeMore's got a
Okay, I'm gonna try to help with Laura as backup here.
Yeah, yeah.
Or up front if you want, Laura. So
No, go ahead.
if council, my colleagues will go to page 59, parens F2. I think it answers your question. So the first sentence says, after receiving a final report that recommends the establishment of a historic district, plural, the city council at its discretion may introduce and pass or reject an ordinance. So that's the point at which we have the opportunity, after this process has gone forward with the commission, and then there's a public hearing, it comes back to us, at which point we can exercise discretion whether or not to move it forward. Now, Laura, tell me if I've got it right or not.
I agree with that. Essentially, this ordinance is the necessary first step, and it obviously is an ordinance. And I understand the sort of confusion of saying that it says, regulate historic preservation and establish a historic district. I think actually the word commission should likely be after that in the title. But this, regardless, creates the framework by which the entire system will operate and puts that first step into motion, which was explained is this study that is then presented back to council to decide, as Councilmember DeMore said, whether and where to define a specific district for, a specific set of properties.
But at that juncture then, Laura, can we also just opt to not move forward?
Yeah, you can always not move forward.
Can you also move forward to this? You have also, city council has the options. It looks like there are 2 districts. Is that correct?
Well, I don't think there's any districts
As
yet.
well as individual houses. Does this cover all of those or just the
No.
district?
This is not specific to properties yet. This is
This is
creating a
just-
framework.
The framework, and it would identify the 2 districts, correct?
And then there
Or
has to
not?
be a study. So a district would be created later.
Okay.
I think you should add the word commission at the end of the title to this document.
Yeah, don't mix up the National Register historic districts with local historic districts. The 2 districts you're talking about are the National Register historic districts, but any local historic districts that the council chooses to set up don't have to reflect those. They can be any group of buildings and connected spaces.
Mayor, I'll try my question a different way. I appreciate the patience. I still don't feel like it's been answered though. So you were referencing section,
Page 59,
page 59.
F2.
F2. So the rest of the ordinance, so the section, the districts, the design and review guidelines, so section 2710 on page 61, the permit applications, sections 2711 on page 62, et cetera. The rest of that, so is that flexible? And when that comes, and when this comes before council at the final recommendation of the commission, is that when we could wordsmith this or if I say vote on this tonight, I'm saying, no, I approve all the language in this ordinance.
If you approve this tonight, you are approving the language of this ordinance, but this ordinance does not create a specific district. The statute has 2 different sections that talk about the local action. One is an ordinance specifically for the establishment of the commission, which is what this does in providing for that study. The second part of it talks about establishing by ordinance one or more historic districts, which are then administered by the commission. Which language are you thinking we should or could wordsmith?
Well, lots of it. I mean, I'm not comfortable with it right now. So I'm gonna back up and state a comment I have. First off, I'm trying to see this from a different lens. I really appreciate Mr. Newman gave me some time, met over coffee to hear his perspective and his wisdom and expertise, deep expertise in that subject. I have walked around portions of the National Registry districts and observed the beautiful homes and the beautiful architecture. And without a doubt, there's an exceptional charm in our community in those national historic districts. And it's a historical character worth protecting. So I'm there. I'm just not there on the red tape that would come with this. We talk about this as, when I'm reading this is a voluntary, it's a voluntary, that 51% of people who in a proposed district by the commission, if they approve it, well, I'm reading that's the voluntary. Well, 49% oppose it. Well, they're out of luck, and any maintenance that, so I was walking through the district, I saw someone who was redoing their pillars in there. Like that maintenance, they would need now not just planning commission and building commission, but they would need a historic district commission's approval. So that's extra red tape. And so my concern is with the ordinance language. And I may get there. I do want to do more learning. I think I'm warming up to it, but I'm not there yet. So if we have to vote tonight, I'm going to vote no. So I hope we can maybe postpone this, because I am willing to do more research and understanding and ask some more questions. One question I'll just jump out with is contributing and non-contributing homes in a district. So a commission recommends a district. Let's just say it's the same as the National Historic one, the East Mitchell District. There are homes that are, as I understand this language, contributing, which are have historic significance, but there are other homes in that district that may not be contributing to that historic district. Do those non-contributing homes have to follow the same procedures for doing any significant renovations to their home?
So I'm not sure if that was directed at me, but I can, I guess, offer an answer that I think generally the answer would be yes. If they're in the district, they'll be subject to the same requirements. So that might be a matter of where you draw the lines of that district.
And so they'd go through the process, just help me understand the process. They go through the commission for their approval. Could they be designated as non-contributing, and then they would not have to go, would they, maybe they get approval, would they still have to pay I'm sure they still have to pay the fees for that process. What does a person in that district who's has a non-contributing home, how do they, what's the reason for them to be saying yes to wanting to be part of that district? Rick, do you know what I'm trying to get at?
Newman, would you answer that question for us?
Well, that has a lot to do with what John Icoangeli talked about in terms of, the impact on the neighborhood. Generally speaking, a non-contributing building would have more latitude to make changes than a historic contributing building would. But the Historic District Commission probably wouldn't let you go hog wild and do something that would really be disruptive to the character of the blockscape or the neighborhood that the district is a part of.
Thank you.
Wow. Mr. Moore.
Laura, I have a question. Is it possible to just suss out the portion of this ordinance that moves forward the commission for study, that takes it as far as when it comes back to council to decide whether to move it forward or not?
I
to
don't
take-
think that this goes beyond that, really. I mean, again, I hate to repeat myself, but it establishes that framework. And I'm always a little bit hesitant to depart from what SHPO has kind of blessed as its model ordinance, especially where it tracks with the statute. Going back to the properties, though, I did want to note that, you know, a historic district does not have to, all the properties in it do not have to be contiguous. So it's not like you have to draw a perfect rectangle and include everything within it. And that's something that could be, you know, studied and reviewed. So, you know, for example, it says in top of page 60, 27-5 districts, the city council may establish, modify, or limit a historic district by ordinance. And then it just explains that before that, there has to be this study. So I don't think this does take us beyond the point where it comes back to council to create that.
Mayor?
Yes.
Shields. Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Moore, I appreciate that question. That is one question I had when I look at just the background on our ordinance that Manager Horn put together. It talks about the CLG program and its goals. And all these goals are I think, something the city can do in forming a historic commission outside of SHPO or outside of CLG. Now, with that, maybe it doesn't come with the benefits, but it's more of a voluntary thing, and it's providing the education. It's integrating historic preservation to our local planning and decision-making process. All those things can be done in a master planning, vision setting, putting education out there. It doesn't come with, and what I learned from Mr. Newman is the teeth. They'll do the enforcement. I have issues at this moment with that teeth, but I'm wondering if we could go outside of that and have a commission, just like we have the Arts Commission. We could do that as a community if we saw these other goals were valuable and meaningful, but there's we get hung up on the SHPO aspect of it.
I have a
question. Mr. Knobtrop.
I have a question that somewhat as a follow-up. Is it I know the tax credit is a completely different deal, but it's a heck of a motivation to do renovation. And so if someone wants to rehabilitate and do the rehabilitation, if you don't have this if you don't have this commission that we're trying to do now, does that then you can't get into the historical tax credits?
Right.
You can get into the historical tax credits if your property is listed on the National Register, regardless if you have a
That for state and federal,
state and federal, right now. If you,
right now. So that's
properties that are in the National Register district here in the community, one is residential and one is the downtown. If they're income producing, okay, somebody owns a property that they rent, downtown property owner owns a building that they lease out, that they get income from, they can, at their discretion, apply for the historic investment tax credit if they're going to renovate their building.
And then they don't have, quote, the red tape to go
Right.
through SHPO.
Now, let me just advise you, based on my experience with HDCs, like Mr. Newman, I was also on a historic district commission. They start small, they don't start big, okay, because they're voluntary. And I can envision here in the city of Petoskey, once the study group gets together and then they do their community engagement, they're going to end up finding a handful of property owners that are very committed to protecting their properties from a historical point of view. So the first local historic district might only be 5, 10, or 15 properties to start out with. What happens is it's kind of organic. Once people see what the property values are and the benefits of being in a local historic district, then they approach the HDC and say, we would like to be included too as part of this club, okay? of historic properties. So I would not envision the HDC study committee coming back to this council saying that we want to propose a district that's got 300 properties in it. It's not going to happen. It's going to start very small and incrementally it's going to increase. But as the city attorney has mentioned on several occasions, this is just the framework. This sets up the process, just like creating an ordinance to establish the planning commission. The planning commission has roles and responsibilities. One's to prepare a master plan. The second one is prepare a zoning code. Same thing with an HDC. It's a process. Study committee, looking at properties, education, coming back with recommendations to council. Council has to approve the boundaries by ordinance. So it's a process. I would say that if you approve the second reading this evening, create the Historic District Commission, it may be a year to 18 months easily before they come back to council with a recommendation on a potential district. You're not going, this is not something that's going to happen overnight. Okay, so I hope that answered.
Am I remembering correctly too, that when we got the SHPO presentation, there was something about access to grants through this process?
Yes.
In addition to,
Yeah, you become a certified local government, and SHPO has carved out of their annual budget a certain amount of discretionary funds that are available to CLGs to actually help finance studies for the commission, inventories, special studies. They've used the grant money for a variety of purposes. Public education, for example, creating a guidebook for property owners that want to go through the process. So, yeah, the SHPO, the CLG opens up an avenue for additional technical assistance to the city.
Could I add another comment?
Please do, Laura.
Yeah, thank you. I'm rereading this because it is, as I said, SHPO's model ordinance. If you look in the middle of page 60 under Historic District Commission, it actually says the city council may establish by ordinance a commission to be called the Historic District Commission. The commission may be established at any time, but not later than the time the first historic district is established. It then goes into the details for the commission, and the rest of the ordinance talks about the commission's duty and role and all of that, but this doesn't actually create the commission yet even. So it truly is a preliminary creation of the framework.
Another little question. Then
Mr. Knobloch.
if we pass this, who's the driver of this to make sure we keep going? Is that the city planner? Are you the driver of the entire initiative, or who makes sure we keep moving and this doesn't?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and this is not to be taken lightly because it's gonna be a lift.
Yeah.
It's gonna require, we're gonna have to dedicate a staff member to the HDC to facilitate the Historic Commission, who meets on a regular basis, and so we're gonna have to facilitate that as a public meeting, and it's just another evening meeting. So that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that, whether that's our contractual planner or someone else on staff.
We're funding that.
Well, they'll be us, yes. It'll be city, yeah.
What kind of cost are we talking of funding then? I mean, if we're gonna look at possibly starting a program and we're gonna look at funding, what's the cost?
Yeah, I don't have that number. It's just another evening meeting, so whatever that looks like from a time and material standpoint, that's what it would be.
But it'll also be multiple meetings, though, won't it? I mean,
Yeah, I don't anticipate that being a heavy lift financially, if that's the question.
Okay.
Especially because as was mentioned previously, becoming a certified local government opens up an avenue of resources to move the study, the surveying of historical properties forward. That's likely something that we would be eligible for from a grant standpoint by becoming a CLG.
Were you involved any of this in your previous jobs?
Adrian already had a historic district commission set up before I arrived. We didn't have this in Tennessee.
Were residents good with this in Adrian, or were there
Yes.
concerns?
But yes, they were passionate about it, actually.
What was the biggest negative part about con of anybody coming forward and working with Adrian at the time on remodeling, changing, etc.?
I don't recall the only one I do recall is, a window replacement, and meeting that threshold was going to be costlier following those guidelines. But at the same time, I think we've all seen historic properties potentially that have been either not appropriately rehabbed or just not followed real guidelines, and now look what we have in its place. And it's unfortunate, I think, personally, I think it's unfortunate when that happens. But I understand where a few of you are going with. Maybe that's a bigger thing that cost-wise, that what that looks like for the property owner. So I get both sides of it. I certainly think this was something that was addressed in the master plan to continue to pursue, and that's what we're trying to accomplish.
Mr. Shields.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Manager Horn, for that. And, some of the concerns that I've looked up and around the state is, I've, concerns with people who want to replace windows and it just being extra costly, or do more modern roofing materials, or install solar panels, and that running into roadblocks. Or Mr. Nachtraub, just, general evolution of a community, new needs, new things that come up. And we're stuck through this ordinance. Now, I appreciate Mr. Echoangeli saying that's going to start small. That does relieve some of those concerns to me, because again, I think there are buildings that need to be preserved. Historical character needs to be preserved. And but is that, to me, that's not 300 homes. That is 10 to 15 homes. And hearing that, well, yeah, I can get behind that. But I'm not ready to get behind it yet. So I'd make a motion, if you entertain one, to postpone this to next meeting. So I can have more time to ask questions. That'd be my preference.
Mr. Moore.
I just want to say that I really support moving forward with this. I certainly respect some of the concerns that have been raised tonight, but I don't think those concerns are in front of us now. I think what's before us is, should we have a commission to look at this, come up with a study, let the public give us input, and then it'll come back to us to say, do we want to move forward? And at that point, I think we can weigh, well, how many houses are there, or how many buildings? How many do we want to move forward with? We can assess things like the concerns you've just raised, or those that Mr. Nachtraub has raised. I don't have any problem with delaying it for a week for your decision-making. I just think we have deep historical significance in this community, Ernest Hemingway, et cetera, and it's super important to try to preserve that. And right in this moment, we don't have to decide if we want to do 300 or if people should replace their roofs, that sort of thing. It's just, should we give the opportunity to people like Mr. Newman with expertise, hopefully, to advise us on what this looks like and whether or not we want to move forward. So I, for my part, would support moving it forward. Thank you.
Mr. Nachtraub.
I actually, and listening to everybody here, I hate the idea of having another layer of somebody telling me what to do. I get that. but I do think we are a unique little spot here in Petoskey, and I would tend to agree with you, Tina, in your argument on why we should go forward with it too. Because I think and it seems like we can manage it, listening to these guys.
Ms. Walker.
Thanks, Mayor. I feel strongly about moving it forward, and I think it's mostly based on my years of serving on city council, and also hearing Architect Newman over many years, and like the passion that he brings to the table to really trying to make this thing move forward. My question always becomes like, whose history are we preserving? And the fact that like Hungry Hollow and the areas around the Bear River have a significant cultural value to the Little Traverse Bay Bands of Odawa Indians. And I would like to see some of that history be brought forth. And maybe that could be like a person that sits on a potential commission, but always I have to ask like, whose history are we preserving? Which comes like that follows like things being equitable and fair. That being said, I would be in favor of moving forward with the historic district ordinance as like the launching point for an evolution of a proposed ordinance as well as the creation of this commission.
I would support moving forward as well. I actually attended the 1984, I believe it was, or 3 or 2, the Hobson House, when this district was set up with these homes. I actually lived in 1024 Emmett Street, the Hobson home builders on Emmett Street, and attended the Lansing hearing on this. So I've been involved in some way or other with this for 45, 50 years almost. So I think it's important to move forward. I just I do not want to put handcuffs on people if they cannot afford to upgrade their home to the standards that are required if they cannot afford it. If we are willing to come up with the funds to support that, I think moving forward, I think that would be great. I'm willing to support this motion right now with the understanding that we do have the ability to come back in the future and even say partial yes or partial no or yes. So, Mr. Moore, do you wish to make a motion?
I'm going to do that, and I just want to echo my colleague Walker's comments about the importance of the Indigenous community and the history of the Indigenous community here as well. I'm happy to make a motion to move forward this historic district ordinance.
I'll second the motion, Mayor.
A motion from Mr. Moore, second from Ms. Walker. Do I have any other discussion from council? Do I have any discussion from public? I go to Ms. Beck for roll.
Demore,
Aye.
Walker,
Aye.
Shields,
No.
Nachtrab,
Aye.
Murphy.
Yes, motion passes 4-1. Next is the agenda, still on old business. Second reading and possible adoption of a proposed zoning ordinance that would allow lower grade development in the central business district. Turn this over to City Manager Horn for a summary.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This is a continued discussion on a proposed ordinance amendment to allow, currently there's a number of retail, restaurant, personal service businesses that operate either at the basement or below the average grade of their respective buildings. So that this again would clean some of that up. This essentially makes those compliant, allowing other property owners the opportunity to maximize their below average grade spaces, in our central business district. So I think, as was mentioned before, I think we sometimes need to get a little creative and think outside the box to reuse some of our inventory we have available, in the central business district. I think this is a great look at how to reuse space that might historically have not been utilized to its furthest potential. So, Planning Commission has reviewed this. Downtown Management Board has reviewed this and chimed in as well. We did have a first reading. There was some back and forth with our city attorney on this as well, and obviously Laura is here to provide any sort of additional answers to any concerns or questions, but this is on, again, for second reading for city council.
Council? Like Mr. Knobloch.
Yeah, I mean, I've read this. I have one objection that I'm trying to get my head around, and that is it's a third board, Article 9, number
Page.
5. Oh, it's page 72, the letter E. I'm having trouble. Why we are allowing, if I'm understanding this, we're allowing hotels to be subground, to have residential subgrade rent out units. We're letting long-term rentals do it. And then last week or last time we had this, I remember someone saying, well, we eliminated the short-term rentals because we're trying to promote affordable housing, long-term rentals. Well, if that's the case, why are we letting hotels? So I have a complete breakdown in the logic that I would like to see if there's any consideration of eliminating E. And if someone's going to invest money and try to use the inventory, let them do it if it's going to comply with residential. So that's my issue.
Ms. Walker.
I think the reason behind that is because we're talking about the central business district. And short-term rentals are only considered permitted use on a second or third floor,
But why?
because that's the way that the ordinance was created for the short-term rentals. So that ordinance would trump this one unless we modified this new ordinance to
So my logic, here's my logic is so you're now allowing it on the second and third, but not the subgrade. I mean, I'm having a hard time understanding the logic of that.
It's not allowed on the primary
Not allowed
level
on-
as well, and it's not allowed on the subgrade. So it's not allowed on primary, it's only allowed on second and third floors. So up, not down.
Ms. Demore.
Yeah, and I would also, I mean, to my mind, every spot that's available for a long-term workforce rental should not be usurped by a short-term rental. And I would respectfully disagree that a hotel's the same thing. I just think we have such a great need for workforce housing that if these spots are available for that purpose, that's what we should use them for, respectfully.
John, could you address the hotel piece of it? Thank you.
Your Honor and Counsel, I think the reason why the council person Demore had asked to amend the ordinance to include residential and hotels. And when we take a look at some of the below average grade uses that are currently in the downtown, a portion of the Perry Hotel is below grade. So they do have a couple of rooms that are already below the average grade. Therefore, the inclusion of hotel, so they're compliant.
But they would be grandfathered.
They would be grandfathered in.
It would be grandfathered in, but the reason why we're doing this is try to make the retail uses, the lodging uses in the downtown, they're being used, we want to make them compliant because right now they're non-compliant and they're
So
non-conforming.
that's the only reason. You do not see any new development, remodeling, et cetera, moving into the hotel.
I don't think so, but we currently have a hotel that does have below grade uses.
But you don't see it on the back of Penny's alleyways or.
I'm not envisioning that. And I agree with the council and the planning commission. Their discussion was that if we're going to allow any type of residential use below the average grade, they didn't want short-term rental because of the need for workforce housing. So that was the reason why they put the exclusion in for that.
Do you have a fine definition of below grade level to grade level? Because we ran into something on the Charles House on Division Street. where what was determined below grade and above?
Yes, that's already in the current code.
You feel comfortable with?
Yep,
what you
yep,
have? I've
yes,
read it, but
yes, I do.
Sure,
Yes.
okay. Mr. Shields,
Thanks, Mayor. I do agree with you, Mr. Knoptraub, that I would support removing that. Even as I say, I am fully involved and invested in the housing crisis. I feel like what we miss as a community in these talking points is the interconnectedness of all things in economic development and spurring development of our downtown, our Mitchell Street vacancies. That short-term rentals are a part of that economic development. I feel like the restrictions are in the cap that we set. This is reiterating my comments made when we were looking at this ordinance in the ground floor level. I would prefer to not tell landowners where, or building owners where they can do the short-term rentals, but have it as a cap. So that's my preference. I would support taking it out, but I think this is great, and I wouldn't want that holding us up, and I would support it as is as well.
Mr. Moore.
So I have some other concerns that might need John at the mic. So I fully support the uses of these spaces overall, but I'm a little bit concerned about these criteria in section 5. I'm just
Page.
72.
72.
I'm just concerned that perhaps the ordinance should provide more robust, specific standards for those uses since they involve humans below grade level. And what I mean by this, and I'm gonna explain this even though I know you know it, in section 1717, which is referenced here, it primarily talks about land uses, right? Like
Correct.
location, screening, traffic, that sort of thing. But in section 1717, it also says that the Planning Commission can consider any specific standards cited in the ordinance, which is, I'm assuming, what these are here. And I'm just wondering if there might be, since we're putting humans underground, if there might be anything more along the lines of specific standards that could be useful there for the Planning Commission's consideration.
That's a great question, but let me emphasize that the major hurdle to this ordinance is not going to be the special or the standards for review in section 1717, which are general standards that the Planning Commission uses to evaluate special uses. The real hurdle here for anybody that wants to utilize below grade is meeting the building, electrical, mechanical, plumbing, and fire safety codes. Those are the codes that regulate human habitation above grade and below grade. And when we had the ordinance prepared in draft, I cycled it over to Emmett County Building and talked to Marty about it, the building official. And we agreed on the language on letter B, which was construction shall comply with the most recently adopted Michigan building, electrical, mechanical, plumbing, and fire codes for the city of Petoskey and Emmett County. That's going to be a heavy lift for any property owner that wants to occupy space below ground in terms of, especially for human habitation, because they have to look at things like ventilation, the amount of light, humidity factors, sprinkling systems, exiting requirements. Rick left. As an
Here.
there you are back here. I think Rick will tell you that doing a design below grade is a whole different level of architectural and engineering requirements than doing above grade. So I think that's why the Planning Commission was very comfortable, because we have all these building codes that have to be addressed.
One suggestion I had for B at the end was to add in any other applicable codes and or laws. That was something I ran by Laura. Again, I'm just concerned that
And that's fine to add that.
Then the other question I have is relative to these commercial spaces. So the commercial spaces already exist,
Correct.
right?
Yes.
So in the same way that these new below grade spaces under section 5 that we've just talked about are going to have some analysis before they happen, these other that already exist, what about that?
Those are, those have been installed. Those are occupied. They would only be reviewed if they became vacant and a new use went in that required review under the code.
So with the institution of this ordinance, would there be any follow-up to make sure that those places remain in compliance since?
Well, that's a whole different issue. And that's an issue that we haven't talked about yet relative to how you want to in the future manage the International Property Maintenance Code. Because the IPMA or the IPMC is your mechanism as a city to make sure that existing buildings comply with the minimum standards of the International Property Code. So that's something that we already have in place. And that's something that the city has and Emmett County has used basically on some of these buildings that are not being appropriately maintained. So we do have some ordinances that are in our toolbox. But your suggested provision under B and, you know, your catch-all phrase, I think that's fine.
Yeah. Again, I want to support this. I do support it. My concern is just the safety of people at below grade.
And talking to the county building official, he said,
I know him.
we've got a number of codes that we have to fall back on. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Good discussion, possible motion, or
I just have one simple question. As a
Please.
refuse person,
please.
as a trash person. So it says refuse collection shall not be located in any public alley or public space. So when you're looking at, like, for example, the alley of the Seville lot, where all those commercial entities have like their dumpsters and recycling receptacles, that's considered private property. And I bet you Amy would probably know this best. Those are all considered private property because they're adjacent to their buildings or within a footprint of what that property owner, Rosentost Duffy's, would own in terms of, even though it appears to be in a public alley, that's actually adjacent to a private property versus like dumpster infrastructure in a public alley. Is that correct?
Right, it's not, you can't have it in the alley, but you can have it adjacent to.
Or like on the sidewalk, for example, like the old gold mine on Emmett Street, before they did their renovations, they had a dumpster on the sidewalk. And that would be like something that the city was like, you can't really do that. Like, that's a public space with a dumpster, other than like rolling out your 96-gallon cart to the curb for service on your garbage day, which would be considered public infrastructure, but the city allows residents and businesses to put out their collection infrastructure on the day of service and then bring it back in within like 12 hours. That's allowed, but no public placement of dumpsters or permanent collection infrastructure. Thank you.
Mr. Moore.
So I just have one more for John, with apologies. So in that 5B, could you also say construction, which is already there, and maintenance shall comply with the most recently adopted? Or is that not relevant at the point of this point of consideration?
No, cost and maintenance, construction and maintenance. If they do maintenance to a degree that they have to get a building permit, then it's going to comply with the code.
So it would be all right to have construction and maintenance shall
Sure.
comply with the most recently adopted Michigan building, electrical, mechanical, plumbing, and fire codes for the city of Petoskey and Emmett County and any other applicable codes and or laws.
Perfect.
Laura,
That's fine.
thank you.
Attorneys love the word shall.
They would be subject to them anyway, but there's no harm in making it clear.
Possible motion or more discussion? Mr. Knobloch.
I'm so sorry. So I'm assuming because of the heavy lift that we've talked about, because I agree with Tina on the importance of human people living below. That's really important. Is it safe to assume that the hotel has already done that lift and everything's beautiful in their subgrade rooms?
I can't attest to that, but I mean, I haven't gone over there to look, but they have to comply with fire codes, public safety, so I would assume,
Assuming they've done that heavy lift.
I would assume so, yeah.
The second part is I still have a serious issue with if someone's gonna make that kind of an investment, we should give the property owner latitude to rent it and well, I get your point about the affordable housing. I personally don't see that we should be dictating that, but that's a fight for another day, so I would tend to support this regardless.
It'll be a respectful fight. Won't involve mud wrestling.
We'll go this route.
It possibly could.
Anything is possible.
That would be a fundraiser.
Don't promise or throw away any. So do I can't call on the public until after we're through with getting to the point of an emotion. So do we have a motion or more discussion? Ms. Walker?
Mayor, I'd be happy to make a motion to adopt the proposed ordinance, zoning ordinance amendment, uses below average grade.
Do I have a second?
Can I make a motion to amend?
With the,
Point of order, may I make a motion to amend?
Ms. Walker,
Should I have included some language, should I have included some language I forgot?
you may start over, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I propose to make a motion with one inclusion under section
5B.
5B.
Here.
Construction and maintenance shall comply with the most recently adopted Michigan building, electrical, mechanical, plumbing, and fire codes for the city of Petoskey and Emmett County and any other applicable codes and laws
And/or laws.
and/or laws.
You make that motion.
I'd like to make that motion, Mayor.
Do I have a second?
Support.
I have a second from Ms. Demore. Council, any other discussions? I would not support this if the short-term rental stuff was not in here.
Either.
It's in there.
No, what I'm saying to council that I feel it's that important that we stay true to what we believe in short-term rentals. Any other discussion? Public, do you wish to weigh in? This is your opportunity to speak. No, no? Okay. Anybody else? Okay, I go to Ms. Beck for a roll. That was Walker and Demore.
Walker,
Aye.
Demore,
Aye.
Shields.
Yes.
Naktrab,
Aye.
Murphy.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Next, at the 8 o'clock hour, is a introduction, discussion, and consideration to set a public hearing regarding the potential establishment of obsolete property Rehabilitation Act, which is called OPRA, District for 434 East Mitchell Street in Petoskey. And I'll turn it over to City Manager Horn to start the discussion.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate the patience of the owner and owner's representative. This evening, did warn them we had kind of a longer agenda, so appreciate your patience tonight. So as council, we've gone through this Oprah process. I know council for the most part understands what is asked of an Oprah. We have a property at 434 East Mitchell Street who is interested in rehabilitating a structure there that is a significant component of our central business district. Tom has a short presentation that he can walk us through to kind of give you the high level overview of the project, and then we can talk further once Tom's through with this presentation. So Tom, why don't you come on up?
So Brandon's gonna join me too. That's,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
by the way, Tom Johnson, 1414 Timber Ridge Trail, Point City, Michigan, with the Landmark Group. Been financing development projects for 35 years, community economic development projects, affordable housing, historic. And this is a particularly fascinating meeting because the basement floor of this, we plan on putting residential in as well as the upper floor, and we're using a federal historic tax credit as well. So very, very interesting discussion prior to what we're doing. Thought I'd introduce Randy Flynn, he's the building owner, and tell you a little bit just about his interest in the building background, and I'll go through some of the metrics of the project.
Thank you, Tom. I am Randy Flynn. I guess I'm the owner and the developer of the building formerly housed the Leo's Tavern. I've owned the building for about 4 years. I own Cortez Flynn Insurance and Financial Services, and that's kind of what I've done for my career. I developed a couple of buildings for our office buildings in that role. I came to be the owner of Leo's in helping out a couple of very close friends of mine, the Wilders, Tina and Dr. Jeff Wilder, owned that building for a brief period of time. I helped them finance it. COVID hit and kind of put the brakes on all the plans that they had. And when they went back to their careers in medicine and moved back downstate to be with Tina's family, I ended up owning this building and have been about 3.5 years kind of working through the process with Rick on the historic tax credit process, with Mike Patella at Shoreline on architecture and designs, with Tom on seeking funding from the MEDC for grants to get it done. If I could turn back the clock 4 years ago, I might not do it all again. I had no idea how difficult this process was going to be, but I really appreciate the opportunity to present to council tonight and have you take a look at the project.
Thanks. So how do we work the next, is it next slide, please, kind of a thing? Not yet, yeah, but
because it's a PDF.
so just a little about the property history, and Rick helped us with this actually on our Part 1 application for SHPO. But the property was built approximately 1895 by the Masonic Lodge, who used the building, and then it was then purchased by the Knights of Columbus, which used the upper floor but rented out the lower floors. And then I believe Tony Kalinsky owned the building for a period of time just after Prohibition, and then it went to Leo Smith, who was employed at the Petoskey Beverage Company back in 1938. And then in the 1980s, the owners transferred to a son, Richard Smith. Then it went to Dr. Jeff Weiler and his wife Tina. And then currently the building is owned by Randy through the TC55 Corporation. You go to the next. Our request for council is to create an obsolete properties rehabilitation district and to grant a 12-year abatement under that. The taxes under that legislation would be frozen at their current rate. So the existing tax units would be paid. I think they pay between summer and winter taxes right now approximately $21,000. So it'd be frozen at that amount for that 12-year period. And the right now the value of the new project, just have my other glasses on, sorry, I'm just trying to read. The value of the improved project exceeds, or the cost of the improved project, I'm sorry, exceeds the value. The value is about $2.6 million. It's a $4.8 million project. So it wouldn't happen without the abatement, MEDC grant, and the federal historic tax credit that we're getting. Federal historic tax credit, there's a couple different ways that it works. One is the owner claims a credit, and we're not doing that here because the IRS has passive income restrictions, and the passive income restrictions limited to about $30,000 a year. And so when you have a credit that's worth several $100,000, it becomes impractical. So what I've been doing for the majority of my career is that banks invest in that credit. And they do that for a fee, and they discount the credit, and it's after 20%, it becomes about 16 to 15.5% when you net it all out, the value of it. So that's what we're looking at, and syndicating with Mercantile Bank right now. That's who we're looking at, is the purchase that. It's particularly challenging to syndicate a smaller building like this $4.8 million is considered small in the tax credit world. So some of the larger syndicators won't look at it. And so you're down to just a couple financing institutions in Michigan that'll do it. But it's a necessity for the building. I don't know if you can go to the next slide or not. If not, I have most of it in my head, but
Can't see it anyway.
I did email it out this afternoon. You'll have it, Miguel.
Okay.
the summary of the economic conditions, the abatement would save about $24,774 a year, meaning that depending on where your assessor comes in, and we look at the assessed value of the building based on cash flow before the appraiser does it, I'm usually within about 10%. But roughly call it 25,000 a year over the 12-year period. The grant for MEDC is at $1.5 million. That's the maximum they'll give on a historic rehabilitation project. The total, I think I mentioned, is 4.8 million. It'll probably appraise at about 2.6-ish. The reason that is right now, construction costs are so high. I've done these projects all over the state. I just did one in a community center in Pontiac that PNC Bank invested in, the National Trust for Historic Preservation invested in. We've done some down New Baltimore in different areas, and then up here as well. But essentially because interest rates are high and construction costs have gone up so high, now we're concerned about tariff costs for construction as well. That the cost for construction is very difficult to build anything, and particularly to rehab economically. Particularly in downtowns, it seems to be even more expensive. So that's where we look at the grant with MEDC. That's why the program is there. You can go to the next slide. I think what the other bullet point I know is that the project would have negative cash flow, would lose money. It's one of the reasons I typically see, you guys, this is your community, I live in Boyne City, but vacant buildings typically aren't economically feasible. There's a reason they're vacant. And typically the costs for renovating them to get new tenants in to pay the rent. Obviously the second floor of the building, we'll look at some pictures here in a minute, is vacant and underutilized. The basement is unusable in its current condition. Anyways, the renovation scope of work, they're going to restore and repurpose the main level, put a family dining establishment there, a real nice family dining establishment. They'll create 4 new apartments on the upper floor, and those will be 1,100 square feet. And then the bottom floor will be smaller units. Will be suite style. So you'll have, it's kind of like more college style apartments that are becoming more popular. They'll go for about $900 a month, where you have
How many square feet?
400 for each unit, and then there's a common living space. So each unit will have its own bedroom and bathroom, of course, and then they'll share a living and dining area on the lower unit. So we call them suite style apartments. We actually tried it a couple different ways, or several different ways to make the economics work. This is the best. This has a couple % rate of return on it. Folks like Randy were fortunate to have, they look at the long haul of the building, but there's still a lot of risk. That $4.8 million, he's got into the purchase price and the 3.4 roughly for the construction. He has to sign a personal guarantee for that. He has to also provide a substantial completion guarantee and a guarantee that the building will remain in use for 5 years to the bank who invests in tax credits. Because if it doesn't, that tax credit has to be repaid, and he's responsible for repaying it. So there's an immense amount of risk and pressure and responsibility that comes on the developer. These buildings, we don't ask for the abatements casually, I guess is the best way to put it, or the grant funds casually when we do these. So the building will have all new interior finishes. It's going to have all new HVAC, air conditioning, electrical, plumbing. That all needs to be pulled out of there. Some of the historic features will be kept, and that's some of the things that Rick is working on. Others, like the wainscoting they want to keep, and they want to leave plaster on the walls as opposed to exposing brick. The windows are all going to be replaced. However, the window styles and openings have to kind of honor the historic character of the building. So basically, massive renovation. The total project is 3.8, so that's the building acquisition, which is $800,000. There's construction interest fees in there. There's equipment, environmental costs, et cetera, that I'll go into that total amount. Go to the next slide.
Question.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I do, but he can finish.
Go ahead.
Okay, at any point, Ed. The, the next is just a few photos. If that's the building exterior, you're probably all familiar with that, the front and the back. And the next one you can go to. The main floor, you can see the condition of it. It's just, it's not anything you could move a tenant into. It would probably violate several building codes now because it's been sitting vacant. So no, it's no reflection of the past owners. Historic buildings are very costly to upkeep. That's the best way I can put it. And then that builds over time if that upkeep isn't done. And then you have conditions such as this. So this is the original Cherrywood Bar that was created by Leo's in 1938. That will be put into the speakeasy that will go in the basement. So there'll be a speakeasy restaurant in the basement on one side and the apartment units on the other. The apartment units, by the way, will have, they're going to meet all the building codes. Shoreline Architecture is doing the design of that for fire suppression, everything else. And they're going to put, I don't know the size of them because I don't do the architecture as much as the financing piece, but the full egress, ingress windows, so it meets fire code that if there's a fire, you have the sprinklers, plus you can get out the window. And the other part is the state had wanted us to show that there's an ample amount of natural light being let in because we were doing housing below ground, which is a concern always. So you go to the next slide, please. It's the upper floor, which I don't know how many of you have been in there, the upper floor, but it's very outdated and it's been underutilized historically. It hasn't been rented much. So the, in the next slide, please. There's the basement, a garden level. The ceilings are 9 feet high, if I remember correctly, and the reason I mentioned that, if you, you wouldn't want 7-foot ceilings below ground, right? So we're gonna have ample headroom in there, which is, I think, an important thing. And you can go to the next slide. It's just a summary. Again, it's a 130-year-old building. It's significantly deteriorated. I think if you've been in it, you would see that. And if you see it on the outside, over time, I think for those who live in Petoskey, I don't live here, but I come here a lot, being from Boyne for the last 35 years. But you can see the condition of the building needs some serious renovation if you're going to have it occupied and have a stable renter base that's there in turn going to support the loan and the equity investment needed to generate this change in it. So, and then just about the traditional means of financing don't work on this building. And that's kind of obvious when you have something that's laid vacant. So that's the end of my presentation.
Question.
Yeah.
Says on the second paragraph on this first sheet, it says the application requests the city consider the establishment of an Oprah district for a 6 to 12-year tax abatement. 6-12.
That's 12.
Yeah,
Right.
that's,
So now
We're requesting
now
12.
you're asking for 12.
Yeah.
this is my memo. So this is just, the Oprah program is a 6 to 12-year program.
Okay, all right.
That's,
Okay.
their request is for the full 12 years. Yeah.
Well, it needs it. I mean, it's one of those things where if you just look at the funding, you go, okay, here's another example. Put a 15-year mortgage on the building. It doesn't work. It needs a 25-year mortgage. Why? Because the cost is too much for the building revenues to absorb it. That's why you need all these things. If the economics, don't work on it, if the, apartments that we spec'd out at $2,400 a month for 1,100 square feet on the second floor, which is about when we talked to, was it Gaslight Realty, we can get about that in a year from now because we have to plan out a year from now. But if it doesn't rent for that, then you go, if you're a couple % high, now you're in the red. So when I mentioned about the abatement, it's not something that helps you in a year. It's something that helps you over the longest period you can on a building like this.
What rent control though? Is there any rent control on this? Speak to me on rent.
MEDC typically, so there's no rent control, or we don't have an agreement with anyone with rent control. They'd like to see from 2 to 5 years that you maintain the rents and that you don't keep, that it doesn't turn into short-term rental. And Randy can speak for
We're
that,
not
but he
worried
has,
about short-term rental because it's.
okay, because he doesn't have any interest in that either. So but anyways, that's
Okay.
typically what they look
Just
at.
wondering what finances of that. Ms. Demore has many questions, I'm sure.
No? Only a couple. So I heard you say that the college style lower.
That's what I
level,
call it. Yeah,
you're
suite style.
anticipating $900 a month rent for that.
Yes,
And did I understand you just said the 1,100 square feet are going to be, you're projecting at 2,400?
that's correct.
So those are not going to be workforce or affordable rentals?
No, just call that market rent. Right now, if we looked at rents lower because occupancy, like in hotels, I've done a number of hotels, occupancy and average daily rate, or what you charge for your room, are interrelated. Here it is too. To make this work, we're looking at higher rent, making a nice apartment, but if we do it at $2,000 a month, it'll be in the red. It's that direct and simple. We've looked at various rents, what works. So Randy's been gracious to look at a tight margin, but there's no financing available. Now, if there was another grant out there, there isn't that I'm aware of, then we could look at it and go, okay, we could drop the rents even more because this probability of staying occupied is higher. And now, and again, we feel that's reasonable for downtown, but it's not luxury, but it's at the higher end of the market.
Thank you. I have another question, but it's for
Please.
Laura when it's a good
Ask
time.
Laura now.
Okay. Laura, my question is this. It's my understanding that sunset clauses for completion can be a condition of the abatement. First of all, is that correct? And if so, do you recommend that? And at what point would we engage that? Thank you.
Hold on a second, Tina. I have to unmute her.
All right, thanks. I forgot that if I muted myself, I was stuck muted. So yes, I think it's appropriate for the city to set a realistic timeline that aligns with the developer's goals and plans, with perhaps a little bit of a grace period for that, because the statute then allows for the city to revoke the certificate if it is not completed and if an extension is not granted. So I'm not sure what the estimated timeline for construction is here. And that isn't something that would be done tonight. That would be done at the approval at the next meeting.
Thank you.
What is further I can add to that, or if you'd like me to wait. The construction period, we're anticipating a year, but let me mention two things. Good communication would be a great thing to have, which I'm sure seems like you are all open to. But my point of saying that is that also that we're working on MEDC grant. If that gets delayed and then we start in January, then we burn through a couple months. Or if between now and when we go out to bid, I'm trying to be an optimist. You have to be, and Randy does too. But if there's if there's another 100,000 and the interest rates drop, well, we could add that on to the loan, right? If the interest rates drop, because then you have more capacity for debt service. But if they don't, and it goes way up because of tariffs, then we've got to find some additional funds. So that's where I think.
We're looking out for the city's well-being.
Right, and
so we're not, when she had that question, it's because we have a concern about it.
Sure.
Because we're dealing with other,
Yeah.
not you, but we're dealing with other people where we're sitting, from walking down through town, stuff that have been 3 to 4 years sitting there. We don't want that. So if stuff's going to be started, we want to know when it's going to be done.
I think if there's any delay, that's where we'd want to come back and communicate to you.
But our business is not, we don't want to be doing delays.
Right.
We want to have it, if you're going to do it, we want a deadline timeline, and that's all.
All of my questions are intended to be respectful. Just wanted
Oh,
to-
absolutely. That's how I'm taking them all.
Thank you.
That timeline is something I've been wrestling with for a long time, and I can tell you where I believe we are right now is I think we have all these grants teed up to be in place by the end of third quarter. And the kind of the preliminary build estimates and things that we've gotten from the various trades are giving me confidence that it's about a 12-month project. And I'm by nature like, all right, if it's 12 months, I'll get it done in 11. But realistically, it could be 15. So in my running my own financial projections and everything, I'm thinking, all right, we get all this grant money and everything solid by the end of September. We're starting demo October 1, and by worst case, by the end of 2026, we're in a position to start moving tenants in and get started. So roughly 18, that's 18 months from today. Yes, because we are still probably 3 months away from having all of the financing and the loans and everything secured. And I'm open to any ideas on how to, I don't want to put the city or anybody at risk on this.
And when does the Oprah actually start? Shane, when does that actually start?
Hearing.
It would be for next year. So 26.
Starting in January.
So if it's a 12-year, it'd be 26 through 38. Is that,
38, January 38.
I believe in that ballpark area, yeah.
You understand that this is nothing personal?
Oh, absolutely. I
But when you
do.
walk through town and you look at, I can point out 6 places that
Are behind
we've had
schedule.
discussions with that we were assured were gonna be completed and are not, so. I don't know if we have a need for a sunset clause or what on something like this, but Ms. Walker.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And I am all about using Oprah as a tool in the toolbox. So right now, you would be potentially the 4th Oprah iron in the fire. The first one being the Emmett and Michigan Street reconstruction of the old hotel, which is actually in motion. The other one would be 314 and 316 East Lake Street, which we approved 2 years ago, which has had no motion. And then the City Park Grill, 2nd and 3rd floors, which was just approved back in the beginning of 2024. But yours actually has a timeline to it. How refreshing. And once again, I'm glad we have a new civil council helping us in the creation of ordinances through this process, because the other 2 were done under a different civil council and a different time. So of course, a little bit of hesitancy because we've already approved 2 of them that who knows what's happening with them. And then the 3rd being one that's actually in motion, we're actually seeing the development. And maybe lucky to the draw or unlucky for the sake of that section of East Mitchell Street, but you're like in Blight Central. You just happen to be the correct owner. A good owner. So I am delighted to see this, and I would feel very comfortable making a motion to establish the public hearing for 434 East Mitchell Street.
And now, Trump.
And I
Wait.
recognize.
Yeah.
I need us.
I'll second the motion.
Motion, we have a second. We should have probably had more discussion prior to our motion, but since it was opened up, Mr. Shields, you wish to second it?
Yes, I
So I
second.
have a motion from Ms. Walker, a second from Mr. Shields, and now you can have more public comment here. First, the council.
So I love these things, and it sounds like you got your act together. You got a good professional to help you. Is this what I recognize? You got to get grants. Is your financing set already approved if you get these grants?
Yeah, we have a term sheet for the construction loan and the commercial and the term loan after construction's complete. And we have a letter of intent from Mercantile Bank for the historic tax credit funding. So this is kind of the last piece that we're working on.
And I know you got to go to the school system, and this is a question. Well, it says here, if council approved, you got to go to all the other, mainly the schools.
It's just notification, isn't it?
So is that,
Yeah,
do
the
they have
city-
the approval to say no?
No,
Okay, so this is is that right?
no, did it?
The city provides notice to all affected local units, including the school district, ISD, anybody else affected by it. So that notice will get sent to them. And just tracking back a bit to the motion, I assume that was the motion on, because there's 2 items, right, for new business. This is a motion on the resolution to establish the district.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
the first, yes.
Okay.
There'll be 2 separate motions, but
Solicit comments on the district, right?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so that is correct. This is what we've done in the past is once the public hearing is set, we will send out notices to Emmett County, North Central Michigan College, Greenwood Cemetery, Petoskey School District, and Shar-M ISD seeking comment.
And what's, I guess, what their comment?
Yeah, they can provide written comments.
Come to us and say, we don't like it, here's why?
They could.
Okay, okay, that's
Yep.
good. That's all I have.
Usually if anything, they've sent a letter.
I think this is great.
Mr. Shields.
So the national organization Strong Towns, they have a book out called The Housing Trap, and there are two avenues for cities, municipalities to tackle the housing issue. One is changing the zoning codes to be more favorable to zoning, have recommendations there. The second is to support small scale developers. And Mr. Flynn, I hope you don't take offense, but I look at you as a small scale developer. You know,
That's probably
as Mr. Johnson said, you know, the system is set up for large scale developers, and there's a lot of challenges that a small scale developer needs to go through. And so it is, I think, something the city of Petoskey should strongly look at is how to support our local small scale developers, because generally they are local. And that sets us up for small scale developers are going to be more willing to take a risk on a community asset. They're going to look at infill, some of these things that just don't get developed. Small scale developers are more likely to take it on. And that's how communities can build resilience and economic prosperity by support. And that's the argument Strong Towns makes to emphasize supporting small scale developers. So I think this is a great step towards supporting a local small scale developer. And I'm very much in favor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Moore, do you have anything? Anybody comments?
Well, in my strong support, I think the sunset, I look forward to having that be flushed out as well.
Yeah,
When
it's,
would that be fleshed out?
The next,
Yeah.
it'd be part of the next resolution.
Okay.
Laura, the sunset clause would follow later, correct? Yeah.
And I'm not sure it's a sunset clause so much.
Okay.
It's not like there's any automatic expiration or revocation. Just the
Right.
statute contemplates that the city can approve a completion date. And if that completion date passes and it's not extended, then the city could revoke it.
Yeah.
Note that the state tax commission has to approve the certificate. The state tax commission does not have to approve the revocation.
Again, my biggest concern is look down. She's listed several of them that we've got stuck on. So
Yep.
that's why I asked these questions, and that's why
And as Tom and I talked today, I think, and he led off with it, the biggest thing is communication. Come and talk to us. You know when our meetings are. You're always welcome to come and fill us in on how things are going and how things are progressing. I think council really would enjoy that.
Meant from the heart too, like.
Yeah.
We want to come back.
Yeah.
Yeah, this has been fascinating.
Yeah.
The whole thing.
I give you guys a lot of,
So glad you-
so much credit
Because of the-
for
we're
what you
talking about
do.
the tax credits and then the
We're nerding
low-income
out over
housing,
here.
it's just, yeah.
I just wanted to say that for me, it's not about a hammer. It's about being collaborative and having the dialogue and communicating. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other comments, council?
I do have just one maybe kind of semi-building question. I know that David Meikle in his development, where he developed the second and third floor above what is now Luigi's and TAP 30, he had to put an elevator in. Was that something that he was required to do, or is that something that you've considered, an elevator, or is that not necessary?
We are doing an elevator.
You are doing an elevator. Okay, excellent. I didn't see that in the
Yeah,
presentation.
and I think we crested the number of housing units that required an elevator, or maybe it was, I can't remember exactly why, but the design does have an elevator in it.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Very good. Does the public wish to weigh in on this at all?
Yes, there's one online.
Ms. Singer, you may speak if you wish. Full name, full address.
My name is Marcy Singer and I live at 908 Sunset Court in Petoskey. I want to thank Mr. Flynn for investing in Leo's Lounge and for wanting to bring it up to date to make it a viable property for downtown Petoskey. That is something that is desperately needed. I am wondering, I have lived downtown and I don't know if there are any other properties that are going for $2,400 a month. I know that you got the guidance from Gaslight Properties, but I'm just wondering, I'm concerned when you said at a monthly rate of $2,000, you'd be in the red, and I'm concerned to know whether or not you can actually attain the $2,400 a month for those upper units.
We did have a couple of data points of rents that were getting 2,400, I think one was $2,500 a month. They were new properties that had just been redone in the last couple of years. I would be dishonest if I didn't say I share your concern. I feel like I'm facing potential negative cash flow for a while until maybe appreciation of rents and maybe interest rates go down and things like that. I'm just completely committed to getting this project done and I guess accepting the fact that it might be dicey for a few years.
True entrepreneur.
That's it. Any other comments from the public? I go to Ms. Beck for roll.
Walker.
Aye.
Shields.
Yes.
Demore.
Aye.
Nachtrab.
Aye.
Murphy.
Yes. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Flynn.
Thank you.
Mr. Johnson. Now we're going to the next one. Introduction and possible adoption of a proposed resolution to set a public hearing regarding the potential approval of the obsolete property rehabilitation exemption. I wrote on my top of my paper, I'm sorry. Certificate application for 434 East Mitchell Street.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Support.
I have a motion from Mr. Shields, a second from Ms. Demore. Any other discussion, council? Public wish to speak on this? There none, I go to Ms. Beck for roll.
Shields.
Yes.
Demore.
Aye.
Nachtrab.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Murphy.
Yes. So it passes 5-0. Thank you. 7 more things to go, yes. Wanted to be up before the sunset. We've got 1 hour and 2 minutes.
Yep.
Okay. Next is the adoption of a proposed resolution amending the social district maintenance plan and social district commons area. And I go to the city manager Horn for this.
I'm gonna ask, can't see her, but I think she's still over there, Amy to come up and give us an overview on the agenda item.
Thank you. Again, the social district was set up in 2020, and it is an economic development tool. Over time, when it was created, it was one of the first in the state. And so it has been amended incrementally as businesses have wanted to join, or issues have come up with borders or whatnot. So I had a meeting, or I arranged a meeting for all of the social business district licensees to come together and talk about what's working, what's not working.
Nice.
We didn't have great turnout, but overall, the businesses who did attend feel that the district is beneficial to their businesses. And they had a couple of requests. One was currently, the district closes at 9:00 p.m. And particularly in the summer, it is light well beyond 9:00 p.m. We realize that retail businesses are not open at that time, but there are activities going on. And the point of the social district is to allow people to walk around the downtown in the commons area, which is the sidewalk, with their special social district designated cup. And as they're doing that, they are window shopping. They are experiencing the beauty of our downtown. and then they may come back the next day and go shopping. So the request originally from the group was to extend the hours to 11 o'clock PM. The management board discussed that request and is recommending a 10 o'clock limit in the hours. And again, during the winter, you're probably not having a lot of people walk around the commons area, but in the summer, that does allow people out and about. And again, the social district cups are the only legally carryable alcoholic container in the downtown. You can't walk around with a can of beer downtown legally. You could sit in the park legally, but you could not walk down Lake Street and go window shopping. And so we do have our concerts in the park and our movies in the park. Those are all free to the public, yet paid for by the downtown businesses through their special assessment district. So they're creating an ambiance where people want to be, and having the social district allows businesses in that district to sell beverages rather than people going to a corner grocer and buying a can of beer and bringing it into downtown. I'm all supportive of corner grocers. However, as an economic development tool, I think we need to give as much flexibility as possible. So that's the first request, is to extend to 10 o'clock PM. And then when the district was created, we didn't have malted vinyl on Mitchell Street. So that block didn't have any businesses. Malted vinyl does have a front and a rear entrance. The alley between Howard and Wakazoo is part of the commons area, but the alley between Howard and Petoskey is not. So there was a request that is also being recommended by the management board of adding that alley to the commons area. So that is the request before you.
Does that include the parking lots?
Sorry?
Just the alley.
That does not include the parking lots.
It does not include the park. There is a dedicated alley in that, right up against the buildings there.
Did the planning commission review this?
It did not go to the planning commission, no. I don't believe any of the social district approvals have gone to the planning commission.
Mr. Moore?
So I've got several questions, but I just want to start with one thing here. On this map, there's this jut out into the park here. And the last time this jut out right here, anybody wants to see? The last time this came before us, I asked the question about this because Arlington Park is not on the initial resolution. So what is this?
The issue that was raised was that there was a reference to Lewis Street south of Quarry Park, not north of Quarry Park. That highlighted area east of Lewis Street is actually the extension of Rose Street. And Rose Street is within the social district boundary.
Isn't that Arlington Park right there?
It's the extension of Rose Street.
Okay, I'll reread the original resolution. So confirming though, for malted vinyl, they have a front entrance.
Correct.
In which people can egress and ingress.
Yes.
With their cups. Okay. All the reasons you're giving here for expansion pertain to summer. Long daylight hours, downtown activities. Point of clarification, is the request for hours expansion just for summer or year round?
It's year round, and part of that was in discussion with Public Safety Director Carr, and it's just why have different rules for summer versus winter, even though we know in the winter, likely people are not going to be using the social district until 10 o'clock PM. But just for consistency, have it 10 o'clock across the board.
Has there been any outreach to folks that are downtown residential folks who live down there about the extension of these hours?
There has not. I did put a email out to our entire downtown email list, letting them know of all these ordinances and things that are on your agenda tonight and asking for input or business comments. And I don't know if you've received any, but I have not.
Those are
Although you
businesses.
did receive possibly one from Malted Vinyl.
Those are businesses. Those are not.
Correct. Well, there may, yeah, those are merchants primarily, yes.
What do we have? About 100 people, renters down there?
We have approximately 100 dwelling units in the downtown.
Okay.
So this whole project was created before I was on city council, and I kind of looked back to see that it was actually created during COVID-19, citing those circumstances in support of the creation. Is that your understanding as well?
That is when the legislation went into effect, correct?
Okay, thank you.
Got from council or comment or? Mrs. Walker?
I'd be happy to approve the recommendation to amend the social district commons area and service hours. The social district commons area extension amendment would be to include the proposed commons area adjacent to the buildings that abut the Darling parking lot. And the service hours would be expanding it from 9 PM to 10 PM year round. Which we do have that winter open house, and that does go till 10 o'clock nights, so there would be winter comings and goings.
I'll support.
We have a motion from Ms. Walker, support from Mr. Nautraub. Any other discussion? I'll vote for this, but I'm not real happy that we continue to push alcohol, especially at family events such as in the parks. I see that we have enough alcoholism, I think, and that we have bars, multiple bars people can go in and drink, but that being said, that's it. Mr. Moore?
I'll just to indicate for the record that, and I've stated this before, I'm not a supporter of the continued expansion of the downtown common area or hours for consumption of alcohol. Thank you.
Public wish to weigh in? I'll go to Ms. Beck for roll.
Walker,
Aye.
Nachtrob,
Aye.
Shields.
Yes.
Demore, sorry, couldn't remember what I didn't say.
No.
And Murphy.
No. Motion passes 3-2. Next on the agenda, adoption of the proposed resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement, amended to agreement to the local fiscal recovery fund distribution between Emmett County and the city of Petoskey. I turn it over to City Manager Horn.
Thank you, Mayor. So as council may recall, we have 2 rounds of funds that we were granted from Emmett County, which we matched 1-to-1. So a $50,000 grant in round 1 matched by $50,000 by the city of our ARPA resources for round 1 was Winter Sports Park, snowmaking and infrastructure projects. That grant agreement was set to expire in July of this year. I have reached out to Emmett County seeking an extension, which it's on Emmett County Board of Commissioners agenda this evening. So hopefully that gets approved on their side. But the request is to essentially extend this grant to the end of September. That'll give us time to expend those resources. I do have, which will be another agenda item forthcoming. We'll have a projected balance. You can see that in my memo of just over almost 38,000. So once the master plan is completed, we will need to come together to determine where we want to finish out those resources at that time. So this is just essentially a housekeeping issue to allow me to execute an agreement to extend this grant agreement out to September 30, 2025.
I'm happy to make a motion and let's,
Okay,
so moved.
motion from Mr. Moore,
I second the motion.
the second from Mr. Shields, discussion. Public wish to weigh in on this? Go to Ms. Beck for roll.
Demore,
Aye.
Shields.
Yes.
Knocktop,
Aye.
Walker,
Aye.
Murphy.
Yes. Next is first reading of proposed ordinance amending chapter 7, building and building regulations to regulate vacant buildings. Turn over to City Manager Horn. Isn't it, am I on the wrong page?
I think nuisances are next.
Nope, you're right. You're right.
Oh, I've got mine in the
Yep,
wrong
we're on
one.
E.
Yeah, we're on E, regulate vacant buildings. I
Okay.
turn it over to City Manager Horn.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. As I mentioned, this is on for the first time. If we just want to have a discussion, that's fine. I put discussion in potential first reading, but certainly want you to have your time to get this dialed into where you would like it to be. I asked our city attorney to kind of draft this for our consideration. I did provide her the example from another community as well, that city council had seen in the past. So essentially, this is, would be a tool in the toolbox. Obviously, does this answer all the concerns that we would have in and around our community? Likely not, but I would say that we need as many tools in the toolbox as possible to address blight and vacant buildings in and around our community. So I think this is a good step in the right direction. I think it addresses a lot of concerns and issues. Certainly, we can go through this and tweak it as city council desires to refine it, to make it your own. But I would just kind of open the floor at this point with our city attorney and with city council to try to get feedback, and this will be likely an ongoing discussion as we move this forward.
Council, comments, questions? The first reading.
I mean, I submitted all my kind of questions and input to the city manager, which he submitted to Laura, and then I guess everybody has them. So I don't really know if you want to go through all that or what you would like to do. And I know, Derek, you did as well. I have yours. So I don't know what approach you'd like to take.
Which approach would you like to take?
We could do it like we did the STRs, and if you want to go section by section, if there's no potential change, we keep moving. That's it.
Ms. Walker.
So earlier this evening, it was our city planner. He mentioned something about the leverage that we have in the court systems with International Property Code maintenance. And we have two examples of two vacant buildings, two blighted properties in town where the Emmett County Building Department has been the authority to be able to leverage a court case. And I believe it would be district court, is that right? Or is it, nonetheless, one of the court systems in Emmett County, circuit court, thank you. And it's kind of like died on the vine in the legal sense. So we have two blighted properties, one of them being on Emmett Street with Gary Greenwell, and two residential homes that have been vacant for over a decade. And we went through all the rigmarole with the court systems, and those buildings remain vacant and no work is being done. And we're like at a standstill. My fear and my concern is like, what is this doing that International Property Code maintenance and the court systems are not doing, serving the city of Petoskey?
I will just say, there'll be forthcoming, some additional guidance from our city attorney. We've had discussions about next steps, and that'll likely be a closed session discussion that we go into hopefully at the next meeting, potentially give Laura and her team time to, we've been throwing her a lot of information on some properties. And so she's got a game plan and will likely be ready to go into closed session at the next meeting to go through that.
Yeah, and without disclosing too much of that, city manager, and I appreciate that, that'll be both from the kind of ordinance front and the specific, some specific court cases that you're talking about. And I have had communication, with Emmett County on those.
Mr. Shields?
Appreciate that.
Thank you. And so, yeah, I also, when I was looking at reviewing this, I started mentioning the word blight and seeing how that could fit into this. I think that is a blight ordinance is separate.
Mhm.
And so, I think, Ms. Walker, I agree. We have the International Property Maintenance Code. But wondering, the question is, and maybe this will be a good discussion, is do we need a separate blight code? Because I think what we need is teeth to that IPMC so that we can have penalties. Because right now, I don't know if we can have penalties from the city's end. We rely on the county for that. So that'd be I'd be very interested in having that discussion. So it sounds like you're moving that forward. So thank you.
Yeah. Laura and her team are putting forward a dangerous building ordinance for us to consider as well.
Okay, great.
That's the first reading on this one. Are you good with where we're at? You want to go through it step by step, or what do you want to do? Mr. Knopfler?
I read all of Tina's comments, and I would just end up deferring to the attorney. Although there's a lot of things, if she's recommending it, I'm fine. But there's a lot of, I get kind of tangled up in all these things.
Laura, have you reviewed the comments from Mr. Moore and Mr. Shields?
I reviewed, Councilwoman Demore's comments and sent a response to the city manager. I think that was the only, I'm sorry, were those, I think they're
Yeah,
both. two emails.
I did send them out to city council. I apologize. I may not have sent you, Laura, Derek's red lines. I can certainly do that.
Yeah, I don't think I saw those.
I may have not done that.
If you did send them, I might have missed them as well. So we'll.
I mean, those are not substantial. Maybe we can go through those now.
Mr. Shields?
Yeah, and I also went through Mr. Moore's comments and generally supportive. I without it in front of me, I can't say, I didn't print it out and write questions, but I think those are great comments of supportive. This is great. We heard from the city residents pretty strong and clear about this. And then I feel like there's some unity here. So this is great that we are coming together on this. My comments were just about, or additions were just about how much teeth we can put into this. And so enable editing.
It's always going to come down to some extent on how aggressive the city wants to be in enforcement, and aggressive often means how much money you want to spend on enforcement. Because the more effective route, if you've a couple of options, right? A civil infraction option, which can be effective, but for your most difficult properties, a circuit court action is likely going to be more effective. Where you can go in and get an emergency injunction, where you can go in and get an order for the city to incur the cost of, cleaning up light or taking other action to make a property safe, and then charging that cost to the property. So there's different tools. The purpose of this ordinance and a future ordinance we will present to council is to give you as many tools as we can so that you have different enforcement options, and also to make sure no properties sort of slip through the cracks in terms of what the code prohibits.
Thanks, Laura. My points that I bring up here are I look at the registration renewal and make a suggestion that after the first year, then it's every 6 months for any renewal, and that there is the registration fee is I add every time it's renewed that it's doubled the fee. And then something here in late fees that I just have a question, clarification on some of the language there. And then the big the biggest thing that I put in there, which I don't know is something we can or can't do, is in that civil infraction is putting a penalty into, for violation of this chapter of this ordinance.
Putting a dollar amount on the civil infraction.
Exactly.
And that may segue into another one of the I'm not sure if it's on tonight's agenda or a different agenda item. Maybe on tonight's agenda. Yes, that's an option as well. On the actual inspection fees or registration fees, I would caution against increasing them solely based on the time that they've been vacant, unless you can correspond that to an increased cost on the city's part, because you don't want the fee to become a tax.
Yeah, and that's kind of where we got into a little trouble down in Adrian where I manage. We had a sliding scale that got pretty punitive and we got somewhat challenged. And so we had to bring that down to essentially we should be just covering our costs, should not be. And so we had to scale that back down from a penalty standpoint. And I think some other communities got into hot water with that as well. So I think we need to be mindful of that.
What's the best alternative to that, Laura? If it sounds like Mr. Shields is addressing lack of action, what's the best other punitive actions that can be taken?
Well, let me say a couple things. First, I did like the idea of it being annual and then every 6 months. You certainly can do that. Generally, I say we're not looking for punitive per se, but compliance being the goal. So the options as drafted and really that I could think of would be either you pursue it as a civil infraction, again, which for some property owners might be sufficient. They get that demand letter, they get a ticket, it prompts them to action. For others, they'll just let the ticket pile up like blight on their front yard. And for those cases, a circuit court action is going to be more effective because you can get an actual court order compelling action, authorizing the city to take action. And we've had one client or one situation where there was an order for someone to comply with an ordinance, and it wasn't blight related, but it was land use related. And the property owner sort of thumbed her nose at the court order and continued the land use, and the circuit court judge put her in jail for a weekend. So, courts don't like it when you ignore their orders. So there are more, and again, that's very rare. And I don't think that's the city's goal. The city's goal is compliance and having properties well maintained and not sitting vacant and blighted. So those are the options. You can't just tax them extra or anything like that. Unfortunately, any fee you charge does have to be related to an actual cost, not dollar for dollar, but reasonably proportionate to any cost the city is incurring.
Is there quicker steps to move it to circuit court than to screw around with multiple times and opportunities and increased? At what point can we just jump to the circuit court?
Well, take the dangerous facade downtown, right, where we needed kind of some immediate action to get something done.
Right.
The city has to decide when it's worth doing that. If it's something where it's been sitting, vacant for 5 years and hasn't changed, we're probably not going to get an emergency injunction. We would probably send a demand letter first before filing the suit. But you don't have to go through the civil infraction process before filing a circuit court action. Those are two different tracks.
Okay.
So if there's anything where there's a threat to the public safety, that would warrant expedited filing.
But there's also ability to file due to the lack of long-term inaction.
Right, you always have, so the way this is drafted, and this is page 102 of your packet, a violation is a civil infraction, but you can also seek equitable relief. And equitable relief is code for, we can go to circuit court and get an order compelling the property owner to fix it or allowing the city to, fix the problem and charge the cost to the property.
I think the public, and we heard this loud and clear at our city convention, do the fastest, quickest, and just get it done. And that's what I'm saying is, I don't care what the cost is. We want action.
Yeah, circuit court action is going to be the faster option.
I don't see, because I don't see it changing with slap on the wrist. I don't see it changing with this one owner or the three owners that we're talking about. I don't see a change, so why waste our time with, just move it right to the court system and push it, is my feelings. Mr. Knobtrop.
So I guess our ultimate hammer is we go in and fix it ourselves.
Go to circuit court first.
But you go to the circuit court, and if they say they don't have the money to do it, then it could go into a criminal, go to jail if he or she doesn't follow the court order to fix it.
Yeah, generally a
Ultimately,
circuit
it's still
court
just
judge
back
is
to
going
us to have
to,
do it. If they
generally,
say no,
sorry.
I'm sorry too. If the property owner just says no, they don't have the money, they just don't do it. And they come and say, I don't have the money to do it, love to do it, don't have it. Ultimately, we're gonna have to step in and do it. And then just put it on their tax rolls. Is that how it goes? It gets on our
Correct.
tax? And
Yeah,
then
I
we
think it's
foreclose or whatever.
it's unlikely that a sincerely impoverished property owner is going to get put in jail. It's much more for, defiant violation of a court order, which, like I said, the jail thing is probably uncommon. More common would be the court giving the person or property owner a specific time to come into compliance, and if not, authorizing the city to go onto the property and do whatever they want to do. Or need to do, I should say, whether that's cleaning up blight, boarding up windows, possibly demolishing structures if they're dangerous.
We've had with short-term rentals, we've had a person, I believe he went to jail, it was $10,000 fine. I'm totally supportive. I hope council is of moving forward to answer this stuff and get going. Enough's enough. Ms. Walker.
Thank you. Do you know what the intersection is with like being behind on your taxes more than 2 years, for example?
3 years.
Be behind on your taxes for more than 3 years, for example?
Are you talking about property tax foreclosure?
Potentially, like somebody with a blighted, vacant, historically vacant property, maybe categorized, or a dead person being the taxpayer for one of the vacant houses, for example, and this person being behind 2 years on their taxes. So maybe that would be a case of like, I can't afford it. I'm poor. I can't pay my taxes. I can't fix up the buildings.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm a
if it
business owner, but I don't know. Versus like the multimillionaire who owns 7 vacant buildings in downtown, or 11 vacant buildings in downtown Petoskey, who clearly isn't like a situation of in poverty. But has paid his taxes and his assessments on all the buildings downtown.
Yeah, I mean, there's no bright line rule. It's going to be case by case, but our goal is always going to be obviously to make the property safe and not an eyesore, right? And hopefully get reimbursed if the city has to incur cost in doing that. If the tax is going paid for 3 years and it goes to foreclosure, the city will have a right of first refusal if you want to buy it.
To the land bank, right? Yeah.
So you may not want it, but so they may lose it that way.
We will want it. Ms. Demore.
So I was just going to make a suggestion here for others' consideration, since I've got a lot of input here and I know Derek has as well. I wonder if what we might do is have another first reading of this and let Laura consider our input and any that the two of you or the mayor would like to offer, and sort of let her exercise her judgment based on what we've offered for kind of a best proposal for us all to look at. What do we think about?
That's kind of where I was going to this. I didn't really want to, I didn't see anything I was bothered by anything you said, but is it necessary? And I'd like to get her recommendation.
Of course, yeah,
That's it.
yeah.
So,
And she gave, if everybody has this, she gave answers on this too. The only things I would say are like, I know I said, for example, in section 77-A, I said, do we need to provide for a vacancy period of more than 90 consecutive days? And the answer was 90 days is common, but I don't believe there's a statute requiring 90 days. So she might need to know from us you know, are we good with the 90 days? So there may be some things like that that,
Some quicker.
yeah, that require our input, but that could be next time if people were comfortable with
Yeah.
that.
Mr. Shields.
Well, yeah, another example from Mr. Morris was in 7.7B, the registration form. You had a question or comment about the location, 50 miles. And I had the question about if the owner is not a Michigan resident, because can it be a owner is not a county resident? That's one. So I don't, maybe there's value in going through some of these questions right now, so we can move it forward faster.
That Derek was talking about.
The 50 miles.
That is, oops, sorry, this is off. That one's,
That's for contact,
For local content.
emergency contact.
Correct.
Didn't we on short-term rentals we have on short-term rentals, a secondary contact that must be identified? Am I correct?
Yes, it's a local agent
that's
and
what it
it's
said, but
60
if-
minutes. They have to
15
respond.
minutes.
60,
Huh?
1 hour.
1 hour?
well, this was located within 50 miles, and my question was, can we require that a Petoskey resident be the local agent in lieu of one located within 50 miles? So that was my question.
Yeah, I got two of them.
What's that, Miss?
There's two people for that downtown property in question. There's a building manager and then a realtor
Already it's there.
already here. Right now.
Kind of going back and forth with questions. I don't know. What's our process? Are we going to?
We're gonna send all of this to Laura,
She's got it.
but if there's any other feedbacks that she needs to have.
And I can put in, you know, some alternate language if there's different ways we can do it so that you have actual language in front of you.
Yeah, I think that'd be really helpful, Laura. And the other thing that I think would be helpful if, for example, just using this as an example, you know, a $2,000 fine isn't permitted for some reason, if you just even like footnoted that so we understood the reason, that would be, I think, really helpful.
Sure.
But then that, I would propose, again, be another first reading.
Are you going for another first reading or? Yes, that's what I thought.
Mhm.
Okay, any other things on this one?
I just had a question, and
Please.
it wouldn't change the formatting of this. Were both the examples from Grosse Point Woods and Adrian used to draft this?
Oops, sorry. There were, I looked at it like 6 to 8. So yes, the ones the city manager sent were considered along with others that I located.
Okay, and then it doesn't mention anything specific to International Property Maintenance Code. It just says like ordinances and codes of the city,
Right.
but it doesn't mention IPMC specifically. Is there any value to including that very specific language that it was really, really hard for the city to pass that legislation? It wasn't during the term that I was here, but I think the mayor was serving on city council at the time, and that was like a real battle to get that done. So I just want to be able to honor that policy and ordinance and like have it like
Yes.
spelled out, but maybe that's
Yeah,
not
sure.
necessary.
Yeah, I mean, it would be included within obviously the ordinances and codes of the city, but if you want to give it that emphasis, given apparently, you know, what it took to get it adopted, I can certainly do that.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's put your hand on. Okay, we'll move right along. Right along. Next is the first reading.
Are we, did we?
Do we need a motion?
Yeah, we need a motion.
What's the first reading?
For another first reading?
We need a motion to make it a first
Did
reading.
not move it to second?
Well, I thought there was enough. Well,
You can do a motion to
changes.
postpone it to your next meeting.
Okay, postpone. I need a motion to postpone it
You do?
to the second meeting.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I'll second the motion, Mayor.
Got a motion to Ms. Walker.
Wait.
I thought you just said that you made a motion.
No, I said we need a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me. I'll be happy to make a motion, Mayor, to postpone this discussion for the next meeting
First reading.
and be a first reading again.
Support.
I have a motion from Ms. Walker, second from Mr. Moore. Any other discussion? Ms. Beck, roll.
Walker.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Shields.
Yes.
Knocktроb.
Aye.
Murphy.
Yeah. Next is first reading of proposed ordinance amending chapter 13 nuisances. I don't see
Yeah, I think-
the people listed that I think are a nuisance, but.
Oh. I think this one should be fairly quick. As Foster Swift was reviewing, our ordinances, they made a recommendation, a minor amendment to specifically designate violations as municipal civil infractions. Currently, violations are not specified as either civil infractions or misdemeanors. So by cleaning this up, we could seek other remedies such as circuit court nuisance complaint was also recommended. So I think this is just kind of a cleanup, if you will, fairly straightforward, but this was kind of caught by Laura and her team.
Have a motion?
So moved.
Have a motion from Mr. DeBoer.
Motion for what? First reading.
Oh, sorry,
Or we're on first reading.
Yeah, for that one we are.
my bad.
Any other
Apologies.
discussion on that? Withdrawing.
I did.
All set with that? I guess we're good with this movement. To the second reading on that. Yep. Next is first reading of a proposed ordinance amending chapter 21, traffic and motor vehicle regulating bicycle.
Yeah, so quickly on this one, we've had a ongoing concern or issue with bicycles, mainly downtown on sidewalks. We didn't feel like we had great language to address that. So we had Laura and her team review what we currently have and add language that prohibits the use of bicycles. You can see section 21-119 where those would be prohibited. We did add some signage downtown recently to alert people that they need to walk their bikes or keep their bikes off the sidewalk. This is an ongoing issue that we have, so we felt like we needed to have a little firmer handle on our ordinances to address this sufficiently. So Amy, I don't know if you want to chime in further. She dozed off. Amy, did you want to chime in at all anymore?
Just that, we've gotten complaints from the Chamber of Commerce, who watches that intersection every day and what goes on when people leave the downtown Greenway corridor. And just in general, there just seems to be this just obliviousness to anything on wheels that sidewalks are fair game. And understand the ordinance itself is not going to stop that, but without adding it to not allowing skateboarders and everything else, we have no enforcement mechanism. So obviously, education is going to be key continuing component.
This is the first reading too.
Yes.
I'd like to make a comment on that, and that is, I think we need to do, on top of this, I think we need to also review the speed of these motorized bicycles on the city streets. I think we've got some issues here with that as well, but I know that's not being addressed here, but I think in the future, we need to address that.
Either going too fast.
Way too fast. Even on the bike path itself. I was driving 25, almost 28, almost 30 miles an hour from Magnus Park one day, and I got passed by a bicycle. Not having motorizing. So I just feel we've got to start looking. So, Ms. Walker.
Thank you, Mayor. So I just want to be clear, as somebody that rides her bicycle a lot downtown, to and from work on a regular, semi-daily basis, there is a part of Mitchell Street, especially where there's green medians and extended areas where diners can be outside, that really the sidewalk is only the safest place to ride your bike, but that would just involve like dismounting from your bike and walking a certain section and then resuming bike riding on the sidewalk? Or are you saying it's only gonna be allowed on the streets? Because like out in front of TAP 30, for example, with the green medium and the deck, you have like this much room for one vehicle, and then the sidewalk is your only option for riding a bicycle. So I guess I'm kind of curious, do I get struck by a vehicle or do I just walk my bicycle on the sidewalk?
Well, and really on Mitchell Street, you have that situation anywhere there's parked car and the island. So if you're going to bike on Mitchell, which I don't necessarily recommend, because I think it comes down to, we need to better tell bikes where to go.
Okay.
But on Mitchell Street, if you're gonna bike Mitchell Street, you need to take the whole lane.
Yeah.
You're not gonna, you and a car are not gonna fit, so you're gonna have to take your whole lane until you get to a point where you can get over and a car can get around.
That's permissible.
Well, it's also permissible to ride your bike on a sidewalk right now. Legally, you can ride your bike on a sidewalk as well. But if that, yes, I think so. Yeah, I think that's what they're saying. It's like they don't,
This
it-
will stop.
yeah.
This will say, walk your bike or ride with the traffic in the road.
In the road.
Give it some choices. Mr. Shields.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I can understand and appreciate the need for this. But my comment was similar to what Ms. Tweet just said there, that this is another don't do, but we are not doing a great job at where to ride your bike in a safe way. And so I would really encourage us as a community to reevaluate the non-motorized plan. I think there is one that exists, but I think it's outdated and we should revisit that. And we should really address bike lanes and how to do that in our redevelopment of roads. And I think that's missing in our community. So I understand this. You know, I really think we need to also double down on our creating the spaces that are safe for bikes.
Understand though, that we're talking about congested downtown, Lake Street, Howard, Mitchell, and you're not gonna be able to carve bike riding lanes out of the traffic lanes that we have now. Unless you're going to eliminate one row of parking all the way down through streets, and I just don't think that happen.
Yeah, I think a study, and not that I like studies, but a study, a reevaluation of where we're getting people, because from my house to get to the Wheelway, I got to go. I don't have to go through downtown, but there is not a dedicated safe route to get to the Wheelway.
Right.
So that's what I'm talking about.
Mr. Moore.
Okay, I'm gonna start out on the larger issues. I agree with this. I mean, in here, we're saying we've encouraged people to do biking. It's exactly what we desired, but we don't have any bike lanes in the streets. I understand some places they're not appropriate. We don't have any walking or biking demarcations on paths. I get killed almost daily walking in below Arlington there, coming into town. We need better crosswalks for pedestrian traffic. This is something we see again and again. We heard about this at the ward convention. So I understand those are an adjunct to this, but I agree on those issues. I'm concerned, the sandwich boards, I'm hoping, I don't know if those were approved by the design committee. I'm hoping moving forward, we're going to be using something more appropriate than those big signs. But specifically, I had some concerns that I shared with Laura, and I'm going to share them here with you. It seemed to me that this proposed provision prohibiting bicycles on sidewalks, et cetera, conflicted with two other provisions. One, which allows bikes on walkways up to 20 miles per hour, and another one that allows segways as considered as pedestrian vehicles. So Laura's listening and she can respond, but she didn't think that there was a conflict between the up to 20 mile per hour situation, but that she could add language to further clarify that, those don't apply to the changes being made here. The other question is whether or not we want to still consider segways to be pedestrians. And if we're not allowing bicycles downtown, I don't think we want to allow segways either. So I put that out for everyone's consideration. And then I also want to mention that the skateboards here, the changes made for rollerblades and all that in section 1, that was the change that was made, any place in the central business district. If you look at skateboards, they had the same old provision, and this updated provision hasn't been inserted there. And I don't know how well I communicated that to you, Laura, but that was my concern, that if we're going to update number 1 for roller skates, et cetera, that it should be updated under number 1 of skateboards as well, which is the old language for roller skates, rollerblades, et cetera. And then finally, well, 2 things finally. One was, I also think at some point we ought to look at the skateboarding locations where they're prohibited, because while we've done a pretty good job with roller skates and everything, if you look at skateboards, I mean, I see skateboarders on pieces of cement that are like, you know, gates and fences and all kinds of things. And that's just not in that skateboarding ordinance. So I think it's something we should probably look at as long as we're looking at this. And then finally, I didn't know what coasters were under this. And Laura suggested that that could be stricken and it would just read rollerblades, roller skates, scooters, or other similar devices. So you guys all have copies of these. I just wanted to put on the record what my suggestions were and what Laura's responses were. And Laura, if you want to say anything, of course, please.
No, yep, I'll take direction from you guys.
So I don't know what folks' thoughts are on all that. Yes.
I spent Saturday at Tap 30 watching the congestion. Great spot to be, but I can't imagine you riding your bike up and down on the sidewalk nor in the street. I get this, but to Derek's point, it seems like we don't want to discourage people using their bicycles. So we ought to have some way to divert people to get through town, and rather than just say, even walking your bike down past Tap 30 is congested. You know, it's a congestion. And so it seemed like we need to have a little bit more than just say no all the time without having some alternative path.
I think alternatives have been looked at multiple times as far as how to address bicycles on sidewalks. And where do we build bike paths on our current roadways now? Nobody ever comes up with a suggestion on how do you put a bicycle pathway through Petoskey on the congested streets and the congested sidewalk? There isn't, maybe it's.
I got all the medium that we probably didn't need to begin with.
I disagree.
But
I love
those
those green meetings.
those are there for another reason. Those are there for calming effect. Cars were going 30 and 40 miles an hour down through Mitchell's whole way. Those things have been very calming effect to slow down traffic.
I agree.
Your Honor, I just wanted to give you a counterpoint. A lot of times these regulations are enacted by people over 55 years old. And what I have seen over the years when communities, and it's got to be managed well, but when you keep telling younger people, no, you can't ride a bike, no, you can't have a skateboard, they use what we refer to in planning as disruptive transportation. I see kids on the wheelway riding their skateboards with their backpacks going downtown to work at a part-time job.
Yep.
This is a great opportunity to engage the Youth Advisory Committee on asking them their approach to how they would manage bicycles and skateboards in the downtown in terms of the messaging that the city would need to use to educate them when and when not to use those type of vehicles, transportation modes in the downtown. Because you don't want to keep telling a younger generation that they're not welcome in the downtown because they can't use their bikes or their rollerblades or their skateboards. So it's cautionary. And you have a youth advisory committee, and I would say this is a great example how to engage them and let them tell you maybe what the messaging should be in terms of how to regulate this within the park system and in the downtown. That's just my suggestion.
I'm happy to engage those voices as everyone desires. We don't meet in the summer, so.
Mayor, question.
Mr. Field.
And maybe Laura, this is a question about, can it, a seasonality be brought into this in the ordinance where it'd be, maybe that's a law enforcement question, but can this, because we have the busy summer season comes into there's other seasons that's busy, but it's not year round. Is that something we could look at, consider?
Yeah, you can have different regulations during different times of the year.
The reason public safety director felt like we talked about the social district thing is you're sending a mixed message of now you can, and at this date you can't. And for most people, looking at the calendar on which day is September 15th compared to the September 14th or whatever you pick, I can see where the public safety director, Rocky Carr, has said, try to be more consistent across the board with something. Just, it's easier for enforcement, but it's also easier for the people that have to interpret when can I and when can't I.
So with what is being proposed right now, if I have a skateboard, I can't go on any sidewalk in this area.
You can carry it, but you can't
Drive or walk through.
I think it's pretty common in the central business district. I think anyone that I've worked in, you don't ride your bike downtown. There's signage, walk your bike. So I don't think what we're asking for is setting a precedent here that other communities aren't following necessarily. And I don't think we're taking a hard line of we're discouraging the use of bicycles. I don't want to take that line. Obviously, that's not what we're trying to do either. We have an issue downtown and we're trying to solve the issue downtown. I don't think we need to overcomplicate it. Certainly we can do better as far as communicating where you can go and signage and such, but the issue that's in front of us is a serious issue, and I hate to keep kicking it down the road.
I think it needs to be addressed. I have watched too much of it going on downtown. Nikki at the chamber has spoke of it. I just think it's time for us to take some action. And it's not punitive as much as it is protecting the public. It's protecting the people, young, old, walking on sidewalks and not getting run over by a bicycle, a skateboard, et cetera, roller skating. I just think, we have plenty of areas to do that in this city, but talking to the YAC and saying, how do you enforce it or what do you see? Would be interesting to hear what they come up with. Ms. Dibbett is on the line. This is our first reading, so any other comments, council?
Only that, I've made given some real specific input. I think everybody's getting pretty brain fried at this point, and I would like that to be considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Murphy. Excuse me. I'll just say that you have all done an amazing job tonight. This has been a very huge but yet important agenda. So I appreciate everything that you've all been doing. Our comments at the chamber were just simply that we're seeing more of it, but it's also the mobility of our population and our summer residents. And to Lindsay's point, and to the city planner's point, and to Mr. Nachtrob's point, I think it's important that we figure out how to encourage mobility and walkability and rideability in our community, but also putting something into place that just does protect those folks. I'm not over 55 yet, but I also understand the nature of what, we see on that busiest corner of the consistency. I think it's the speed more than anything. So I don't know if that is a factor to Mr. Moore's point of maybe, is there a way that they could be balanced? Because the speed seems to be the electric bikes flying down the sidewalk. And, that is, I think, something we're seeing more and more of. So I'm not quite sure how you regulate this in such a way that it's fair to all and still encouraging the activity within our community. But I do think that we're seeing just a lot more of those close calls, if you will, in that intersection, in that space coming off the Greenway. And the best part of the Greenway is that people are riding it and utilizing it. And so we want that. So I understand the nature of this being a little bit conflicting. So I just kind of giving our point just from the viewpoint of what we see outside our doors on a daily basis.
Thank you, Nikki.
And I really want to continue to say, I understand this is about downtown, but walking on those greenways with no demarcation for vehicles that are either motorized or even bicycles, it's an accident waiting to happen. And I'm not clear why we can't have some lines of demarcation there, just so everybody's clear. If you're, a motorized vehicle or a bike, you're going along this way. And if you're walking, you're going on this way. And everybody's clear about that. So,
Because you got people coming,
Two-way traffic.
you got two-way traffic.
well, they could be, it's wide.
So you're gonna have a lane here, a lane there,
I don't know, but
and then
there,
a little lane in the middle.
I'm open to ideas. I just know what's happening now is,
I think with most places, they just say, these are the rules for use of downtown sidewalks.
I'm talking downtown adjacent right now.
Okay.
Well,
From a comment, what Nikki said is, I think it goes beyond just e-bikes. The congestion in downtown sidewalks is tough for anybody to ride a bike, even if it's a regular bike. Out of respect, I wouldn't be riding my bike on a sidewalk in downtown Petoskey. It wouldn't.
well, somebody that uses the sidewalks and the greenway as well, because that connects into Old Town Emmett. So I take my bike year round, because also it's a way for me to avoid parking meter fees, which in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, working at the Emmett County building, I accrued about $250 a year in parking fines and fees and buying the coins that I used to feed the meter. So mine was a way to avoid parking fees at a county building that was congested with too many employees and not enough parking spaces.
That's the county's situation.
Yeah, and that also working on the county end of things to build a parking garage in cooperation with the city, that didn't work as well. So really, it's like about advocating like what we want to see happen. And as a single mom with one vehicle and a high schooler that had to take my vehicle every day, because God forbid you should show up at Petoskey High School walking or with a bicycle, and the social implications of like the BMWs and the Subarus in the parking lot. As a low-income single mom, riding my bicycle was my means of saving money and being environmentally sensitive and getting to work every day. So there's considerations about like, who are we? Do we want to build an $11 million concrete parking structure for 5 minutes of the summer season that we have a parking problem? I think as a community, we want to invest in sustainability and walkability. And we used to do this great thing called the Smart Commute, which was a public-private partnership with multi-government entities demonstrating best practices in commuting to work every day. And it was a community-wide effort, and it was deployed by nonprofit organizations, local governments, county governments, and that doesn't exist anymore. Now we just have a bunch of people with one car per human in a household, and that is also not sustainable. So I want to see our community also be able to advocate for low-income people and sustainable transportation. And because we live so close and we're trying to provide housing and all kinds of configurations, I see this as almost a personal attack personally, and young people that are riding skateboards to go to work at Chandler's, you know, working a minimum wage job. Sometimes a skateboard is your means of smart commuting to work.
To take the skateboard, ride it to downtown and walk for 2 blocks?
Yes, absolutely. That's totally fine. I'm in agreement with that, like making it safe, but like when you're sending a message, like you send a message that we want to be this, but we also want to do it safely. I'm totally in agreement with that. But like, okay, like you have to figure out your commute. So you can ride here, but then you got to get off your bike there, and maybe you can go up the alley between Michigan and Mitchell to get to the public library, or to get to Yoga Roots in the back to go to your yoga class, or go to the public library. I mean, there's just, I think that there's probably a way, but like the precipice of this just feels like inherently offensive and inequitable. And I'm just trying to like decipher like, okay, what's fair? And like, what are we really saying about how you can get to work, or what's a viable means of commuting?
Okay. Okay, Mr. Shields.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Ms. Walker, for your comments, and just, you know, there's different lives that we all live. And so you're painting that picture. So thank you. I'm wondering if Manager Horn, would you be able to send around the council the non-motorized transportation plan? Is that something that I haven't seen that in a while?
Sure. I don't know if that's on our website, but if it's not, I'll send it out.
I think it's there.
It's on the website.
Is it? Okay, I can look for it myself.
Yeah, I'll send you the link.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Is that it? Moving to the last thing on the list. First reading of proposed ordinance amending Appendix C, sign ordinance regulating.
So this is, we had a little bit of a gap here. We took had our first discussion, first reading back in October of last year. Obviously, we've had some changes since then. I asked Laura and her team to take a fresh look at the ordinance. They came up with a few changes, a few adds, if you will. Kind of back on for a first fresh look at it, first reading, but really trying to remove murals out of our sign ordinance and make essentially the mural ordinance would become something that the Art Commission would review and manage, if you will. So this is again on for first reading and discussion. City attorney has reviewed this, has put their thought into this. I know we've gotten some feedback from Councilmember DeMore on this one as well. I think the biggest, and I don't want to speak for Councilmember DeMore, but I think her biggest concern was the differentiation between sign and mural, the definitions. I don't know if you want to pick it up from there, you know, but.
Yeah, I mean, one of the purposes of this is to designate between the two, which is really kind of important when you're trying to apply the difference. And you can actually read the sign definition. I'm just going to pick words out. Any pictorial representation that is part of a structure or is painted upon any structure, building that attracts attention to the subject thereof, on and on. Well, that could be a mural.
Yeah, good.
So that's the problem to me, that it doesn't distinguish. And so that's what I pointed out. And the other thing I'd mention here, which I haven't before, and maybe everybody's okay with this or not, but the way this is written, this doesn't come to city council at all. we have one elected official, that's the mayor, on the Arts Commission. So this is different than the pieces of art because those come back to us because they require funding. But this doesn't, so it would be the ultimate decision, as I'm understanding it, of the Arts
You
Commission.
can change that. You can
Yeah,
change
I'm
it.
just putting it out there so people can, it's a difference. And I don't know if everybody's good with that or not.
Mr. Knopfler.
Murals, they're going all over the place. And they're beautiful and they're talented. The guys that are getting commissioned for the murals, they're making money, it's becoming a real big deal. I've seen it in spades, murals being ways to get around signs. Because to your point, murals are beautiful and I've seen little word there, it's approved here, but they add a couple letters here, it becomes a sign. And they bypass it if you have it in the Arts Commission. Because I have a couple of different cities, I have direct experience on this. It's a way to get around the sign ordinances. And we need to be really careful about it. And I love murals, I'm not saying that, but we need to be careful.
If you look at,
That's what I got a little confused on reading.
if you look at Laura's responses, you guys have this, I think, from the city manager. She had a suggestion of how we might better differentiate, and everybody has that and can look at that.
I saw it, but
Yeah.
Mr. Shields.
I support taking the murals out of the sign committee, sign commission or sign committee and moving it to the art commission. That makes a lot of sense to me. I appreciate the concerns that were raised. And I will look at those. I didn't get a chance to look at Laura's comments on this one, so I'll look at those. But just at a high level, I was in favor of this move.
Anything else? On that? Okay, move to the second reading now, we will. We want to change this in that.
I would just ask, I think everybody's getting tired. This is a lot. So on both the previous chapter 1, traffic and motor vehicles, and the mural ordinance, you can see the questions that I gave to Laura in her responses. And I would just say, if people can offer their input to Shane, if they say yes or no to whatever, I think that would be helpful between now and the next meeting. That would be my suggestion. Thank you for your consideration.
I see people thinking yes. Well. Okay. It's only 20 to 10, so we'll now have city council feedback updates. We'll start fourth.
Thank you, Laura. Appreciate it.
Ms. Walker,
Thank you.
you're missing the best part.
Thank you, Laura.
I'm all set, okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a great night.
Go for it, Ms. Walker.
Well, I wanted to talk about something substantial, but doesn't really feel like there's time for that, so. Yeah, no comments, Mayor.
Mr. Knopfler.
just one, and this is long, but we've talked about a planning meeting for the housing issues or special meeting. Is that still on our agenda?
August.
The homeless, or is that kind of kicked down the road?
We have not set a meeting for that. We do have I should have put that in my report, sorry. Joint meeting with Planning Commission on August 12th. That's to go over the capital improvement plan. But we don't have anything else on the agenda at this point.
Mr. Shields.
I would support Mr. Knopfler's desire to have a discussion on homelessness and bring in community partners, convene a discussion. So I support that. Earlier this year, when we learned that the solar project at the landfill project was put on hold, I had mentioned that there are other resources out there. One of those is elective pay, where a entity that doesn't have a tax liability, such as as the city, can still get a tax rebate or the cash in hand for that 30% rebate that's out there for the federal tax incentive. Yes, the recent bill to Congress has changed the elective pay system. It still is, we would still be eligible for 2025. And I need to go back and do the research, and then it cuts off over a few years. It's a heavy lift for the city to take something on its own. But my question for the city, for Manager Horn, I can follow up with you afterwards, is where was the process at? Where is the plan? And could the city take that on? And with the assistance of the elective pay folks at the state infrastructure office, could we look at what it would take to get something online at the landfill site and receive the elective pay credits? And I think the community has expressed interest in part of me getting elected has expressed interest in city taking a lead on renewable energy. And I think there's incredible opportunities to look at a solar farm where community members who don't have access to a roof that has adequate sunlight could also invest in a community farm solar project led by the city. So that's my request. And I will follow up with Manager Horn on some specific questions I have, understanding that it's a tall order, but I like to set high expectations for us. Thank you.
Ms. Demore.
So I'm in agreement with Mr. Nachtraub, Mr. Shields about moving forward with a work session to talk about not only homelessness, but the adjacent issue of housing for folks at 0 to 80%. I shared an article I just found today, which speaks of successes in that lane. Having said that, I know we were supposed to get a list to the city manager with our priorities for work sessions, and I have failed in that regard because it's summer, but it's still on my list to do, and I think we should probably all try to do that. That would be good moving forward. I wanted to let everybody know that the new members of the Petoskey Youth Advisory Council have been selected for 2025-2026. We've gone from 12 members to, drum roll, 16. They volunteered this summer so far at the Arlington Park Picnic, which was the first time in Arlington Park. And they're lined up now to assist in Curtis Park as well. Thank you.
Fantastic.
As a representative of your city, I attended the Women's Resource ribbon cutting for their new facility. I also attended the Bike Fest to give out awards for the Bike Fest that was on a Saturday, as well as attending the open house here for public safety. I hope all of you take the opportunity next year to attend it. It's really fantastic. Free hot dogs, but also good to see what's going on. I sponsored 2 days of students coming in, sitting in your seats, deciding how old you should be to jump off the break wall without your parents. Our car's going too fast, fast enough, not fast, et cetera, et cetera. Also, we have a dog park. It looks like it's moving forward. That should happen here for the next year. Attended the Panera ribbon cutting for Panera. We had the city conventions, as you will. I want to say thank you to Mr. Shields for serving. You've done a great job here. I know you're not running, but I know all of us are very appreciative of you because you brought fresh ideas to the community and to city council that we can all delve into. And I'm sure you've moved the arrow one way or another with people on how we stand, which is great. Also attended with Shane, the Petoskey, Ann Arbor to Petoskey, the rails that they're looking at possibly doing. Attended that. Goes on and on. Anyway, I did that and more, but I just wanted to let you, I thought it was important to give you a feedback of what it takes for this job of trying to be involved. If you're not, you know, you gotta hit the ground running here. Thank you for attending until our 3-hour and 45-minute meeting. And I thank the staff for what you do to prepare us for this, because for all the work that it takes us 3 hours and 45 minutes, it takes a hell of a lot longer for you guys to be on top of all the stuff we've been planning and now take it back and do stuff with. So thank you, Shane, Sarah, and Jason and your staff. No further business coming for this council. I call this meeting adjourned. It's 9:47.
It is kind of mind-blowing.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Yeah, we're paid.
We save this for the.
Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, this was.
What?
Wasn't
You
it?
sure? Yeah, no, it's true. You know, communication, like. Being referenced, you know, the feedback and like.
So are you saying you need it printed?
From Thursday when you drop off.
And a lot of that happened today because